Well, good day, everybody. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Saturday or maybe Sunday in the world that you live in. I don't know. Guys, we have a very special guest today. We've got Joel from Dash joining us. I cannot wait. Look at those guns, you guys. Who said that crypto boys don't have guns? Yeah. That's right. You see this little Superman thing going on? Guys, let's get this introduction.
Weapons. Yeah, Obama can't ban these guns, as they say.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's get this intro out of the way, you guys. We're going to get this party started. For those who have not heard, THORChain is the world's leading Bitcoin DEX. You can swap 13 different blockchains across 41 different pools without using bridges or wrap tokens. Check it out at swap.thorchain.org, swap.thorchain.org. Anyone in the world can use THORChain, you guys. There's no account to open, no KYC is required, and privacy is a human right. More on that later. THORChain has two tokens, Rune and TCY. The fees for swapping on THORChain are paid in Rune, and that's where the yield comes from. The fees are deducted from swap, so you don't need to own Rune to trade on THORChain. It's pretty cool, you guys. 10% of protocol's fees goes to TCY token holders. Remember to stake the TCY tokens in order to collect this yield. There are no block rewards on THORChain. The protocol's fees are real money paid by real users. The Rune token is also deflationary as 5% of fees are burned. THORChain is more than just a DEX, you guys. It's a programmable layer 1 with the ability to create smart contracts and dApps. This app layer is being developed by Rajira. If you need help with THORChain in general, please, guys, join the THORChain Telegram group. The links for that is on thorchain.org, and on thorchain.org, you can join our email list. This is the best way to stay up to date with THORChain. Always remember, guys, this podcast is for information and educational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The THORChain community does not endorse, condone illicit activity of any kind whatsoever. If anyone has any questions and want to come up after we get done with the beginning segment of the show, we can entertain some audience joins. Don't worry, you guys. You don't need to have your camera on or anything like that. You can remain anonymous. And with that out of the way, my bro, Kenton, do you have an update for us before we transition to Joel?
Maybe just a smidgen. The DeFi Llama dashboard is live. The Blockworks dashboard is live. So we get those going. I put them on the website. The links are there in the footer and on our ecosystem page. And then I got to give a shout out to Ray Analytics. Guys, he's great. In the background, he's doing lots of work. He's an eager beaver, always interested in doing new charts and stuff. And he was working with the Dune people to get our THORChain data updated hourly, because before I was only doing daily. And so that actually took several weeks of back and maybe a couple months of back and forth. And Ray really drove that. So to give a shout out to Ray, great job, man. And that's it off the top of my head. One of the things is on the STO on our swap interface. We're working on putting in a chat bot to do people have problems or issues with their trades. And so instead of going to Discord to open a help ticket, they can use a chat bot. So we're gonna start playing with that, experimenting with that. I don't want to use Discord for help desk, guys, because I know Sam Yap and Koitsu, they want to use it, and I've been trying to make it work, but it's just nobody has Discord, right? Like if we're going to get 1 million people using this interface, I guarantee you only a fraction of them have Discord, and no one's going to want to create a Discord account just to get help. So we need an easy way for people to access us for help. So hopefully I can get this to work well, and Sam Yap and Koitsu are happy using it. And so that's what I'm kind of playing with, trying to experiment with here. And that's it. That's all I got for now. So maybe I'll pass it over to the Desert Links. Joel, if you could just give us, for people, I know the THORChain community is familiar with you, but just in case someone new is watching this, maybe they haven't heard of you, if you can give us a quick intro about you, your journey in crypto, and how it led to Dash.
Yeah, absolutely. So as people might know, my name is Joel, even though the Desert Links is the handle I go by a lot of times. Easy to follow me on X that way. So I've been in Pretty much as far as I remember, I came from a pretty untraditional background, being homeschooled with some freedom-loving parents, and I kind of always had that freedom in my mind. That kind of like, freedom works for people. I also grew up on the U.S.-Mexico border, and I experienced two very different worlds based on from prosperity. I had people who had dirt floors, for example, who were friends of mine in Mexico. And then the other side, there's a clear line in the border where quality of life with a lot of the same people, the same relatives, whatever, is just radically different. I was thinking, like, why is that? So I knew from a pretty early age that that freedom really makes a difference in people's lives. And also, my parents ran a business in Mexico. And so hearing all them deal, oh yeah, well, you have to do this, we have to do that, all the kind of stuff you have to do where you don't have to do it, all the paperwork you don't have to do in the US, for example. And also, I grew up right after the peso collapse. And so there was still a lot of those old dead fiat coins floating around there. And so I knew that money was not, permanent, maybe, that it can die. So that's my background of how I got interested in crypto. Where it really started, I like to tell people that Peter Schiff got me into crypto, which sounds funny because he's a big crypto hater these days. But Peter Schiff, the gold bug, he had a Euro Pacific bank which had a gold-backed debit card where you could own some gold that was custodied by them, and then you could just deduct some of your gold balance every time you paid with a card. And I thought this was wild and this was amazing. And I'm like, you mean I can just not use inflationary fiat currency? I can use real money, but I can actually use it and I don't have to carry on like gold bricks and shave off a little bit or something. I thought this is great. Somewhere in that period, I ended up moving to New Hampshire for the Free State Project, which is just an intentional move of gathering all the freedom lovers to one spot where they can really kind of have network effects and make things work. And it's kind of one of the birthplaces of the crypto movement. It was just a lot of people, and this is like 2013, using crypto as day-to-day money, maybe not entirely, but like for small purchases here and there. So I got my first Bitcoin from a friend. He paid me back for a pizza, which, later I learned that had a connotation. Although I have to say it was a Chicago deep dish. I don't know. Some people don't think that's a pizza, but it's a different story.
What do they think it is?
It's a casserole. That's what they say. I see both sides, I like both. I like pizza and not pizza. But so I got some Bitcoin, and then the price went over, I don't know, it was like almost 10x in the next month after that. The Silk Road got taken down at the same time. So it was kind of a crazy start. Started using crypto any way I could. 2 years later, I was like, I will talk about this stuff all the time. I've gotten some pamphlet, like I helped design the copy of some pamphlets. They're called the Bitcoin Bigfoot pamphlets that you'd hand out to onboard people. And the community was so small that CoinDesk literally wrote an article about these pamphlets. It's like 2014, and they're just like, new Bitcoin Bigfoot pamphlets. And I'm just like, they would never talk to me today. So it's kind of funny how that works. But I decided I need to go all in. I need to just do all this. I want to do all this. I know people are paying in Bitcoin here. Some people are paying things. I want to only earn that because I have gotten paid for odd jobs here and there. So I just said, I'm going to not only I'm going to quit my job, no prospects. Maybe that wasn't smart, but in retrospect, it was obviously the thing that I needed to do. Got a job writing for Cointelegraph. They paid in Bitcoin. And just started living on Bitcoin. And middle of 2016, I ended up closing my bank account. There was some nonsense, which I don't need to go in with I needed to close my bank account and reopen it. And I decided to just not reopen it in the moment. And I just ended up never going back. And that's been the last 10 years. Later on in that year, I ended up not being able to use Bitcoin as effectively as money because it started to get congested. It started to have slow transactions, expensive fees. So I had to switch to something. I found Dash as I went, literally top market cap down, like crossing things off the list until I could find something I could use. I started using Dash. Of course, the experience of using the network was way better than Bitcoin. The adoption was like, for the services I need, was like maybe half to 3/4 at the time. But then there was a few little things like the Shapeshift plugin back in the day that let you do pay with any crypto and they would settle in Bitcoin even if they didn't want to take it through a centralized swapper that was called Shapeshift at the time. And pretty soon I got to be able to just spend Dash everywhere I needed to. And I've been involved in the Dash community ever since, full-time working since early 2024. And that kind of, that shapeshift thing really is what turned me on to THORChain, which is because shapeshift ended up being censored, ended up going down, KYC forced, etc. And then when I heard that THORChain was like a shapeshift you can't take down, I was just like, this is it. This is everything I need right here. And the quick recap of Dash is it's been around 12 and a half years. Dash is a portmanteau for digital cash, was very briefly known as Xcoin, then DarkCoin for most of 2024 or so. Because of its first feature was a built-in privacy feature. It's the oldest crypto with any kind of a explicit privacy feature built in. Recently, meaning like 2 weeks ago, we got a massive overhaul to that feature, which you can go into later. Been named Dash, which is a portmanteau of digital cash since 2015, so 11 years. Instant transactions, very low fees, high scalability, and usernames, contact list, all that stuff to make things like a Venmo, like a modern decentralized Venmo that's actually private. And 2 years ago, we released the Evolution platform, which is like a decentralized application platform that hopefully will get smart contracts on within a year, if not less. And so that's kind of the whirlwind, comprehensive everything. So nice seeing you guys. Goodbye. Just kidding.
I love your story, Joel. It's awesome. Okay, when you're looking and you found Dash, Monero wasn't out yet, right? And Zcash wasn't out?
So it was late, like October or something like that. I mean, obviously, I saw someone selling bacon pancakes at the Porcupine Freedom Festival in 2014 for DarkCoin. That was my first exposure to Dash when it was called DarkCoin. And I kind of knew about it. I wrote about it, but late 2016 it was Bitcoin and it started to get very congested. Now you didn't get the astronomical fees for another year, but we were getting like $8-10 fees. And my last Bitcoin transaction, when that was most of what I had, was stuck for 2 weeks and ended up having some weird double spends that happened that I double spent it without even trying and had to use some weird advanced tools to like get rid to unstick it. And, so at that time, Bitcoin, no. Ethereum was pretty new on the scene, I think, like a few months or a year or something. Thankfully, I didn't go with that because that ended up being congested, but I sort of wrote it off because it wasn't meant to be money. It wasn't meant to be like digital cash. Litecoin was somewhere on the list, but at that time, it was an abandoned project. People don't realize this about Litecoin, and I'm a fan of Litecoin today. I kind of had to come around a little bit to it, but Charlie Lee started in 2011, so it's been around forever. By 2016, it was abandoned. Like people weren't really developing on it. In fact, when Dash was launched in 2014, it was originally a Litecoin fork, but the Litecoin code base was just not abandoned. It was just abandoned. So they ended up rebasing it to Bitcoin. So it kind of switched over to like being kind of based on Bitcoin and backporting there. So Litecoin was still abandoned. It wasn't until the next year where Charlie Lee, who was director of engineering at Coinbase, was like, hey, Coinbase, can you list Litecoin? And then they listed it. And then there's some foul play, I think, if I'm being honest there. But then it got picked up again. And now they're actually doing some cool stuff. A lot of people use Litecoin. But at the time, Litecoin was like nothing. Bitcoin Cash didn't exist for a whole year after that. So they're like, oh, you're a B casher. I'm like, no, I'm a pre-casher, like a whole year. Like I didn't wait a year to be like, well, let's see if we can make Bitcoin work. And Monero was not anywhere near the top 20 as far as I know, but more importantly, at that time and for the first, I can't remember the exact timing, but Monero had no GUI wallet even. Like everything was command line, full node command line. And the privacy was like not as good as Dash's at that time. There's just a lot of like nuance to that because early 2017, they adopted confidential transactions. So it became from ring signatures to ring CT, and then amounts were hidden. And then that made it kind of like the number one privacy coin at the time. But at that time in 2016, it was not the case. And Zcash launched in 2016, but there were no wallets where you could use it. Like, I think that they had a bunch of mobile wallets that were transparent only, so not really much of a point. I knew a friend, I don't know if it was 2016, I think it was early 2017. He paid for something in a shop with shielded Zcash in the Sprout pool, and he brought his laptop and did a command line transaction in a physical shop, and it took 10 minutes to generate this cryptographic proof on his laptop to make the payment. Now, fast forward to today, Orchard or Ironwood pool transactions from Zcash are like a couple seconds to generate on your phone. So it's like the tech has come night and day. So yeah, there just weren't options. And like Tether was like, USDC was like, I don't even know if it was around or what it was doing, but Tether was kind of being just used as a trader's tool. It wasn't really adopted in any kind of monetary way like it is today. So it was just like, it was basically use Dash or just use Bitcoin as like a background money, but still use fiat for everyday payments. And so I was just like, to keep going, I have to use Dash. Like, if I wanted to keep trying to do what I was doing, the whole living on crypto experiment, which now has become a way of life after, 10 years or so, I didn't have many choices.
So it sounds like the privacy aspect was almost a secondary. What do you call it? Like you're looking more into, can I use this as payments? Can I use this day to day type thing? And then the privacy is like a nice to have. So is that how you're viewing it?
Yeah, I kind of was, because for me, first of all, I think you have to. I wrote some article about how to live on crypto privately, and it's pinned to my bio. I update it every year, but I talk about the 3 pillars. Like, what are you trying to achieve by living without fiat? What are you trying to achieve? And one thing is like a censorship resistant money, like a money where people can't stop the transactions if they can't gate them. They can't say you can't use this. Then there's a scarce sound money of some kind, i.e. the money printer don't go burr. And this is always one of the big problems I have with stablecoins. Again, I don't have a problem with using them as tools. In fact, I do sometimes, but to relying on them, even if it's a super decentralized, uncensorable private stablecoin, the Federal Reserve can still print the value of that down because it's pegged to the value of the dollar. And then the third thing is like confidentiality. Can you use this privately? And the big part of that is no KYC, of course. That's like the number one thing. But beyond that, it's like, well, also no like address tracing and all that kind of stuff. And so can you use it privately? So it's those 3 big things. So like a stablecoin does, depending on the stablecoin, kind of does none of those things maybe. But if it's a good stablecoin, like a Xanos Freedom Dollar or whatever, it does 2 things. It's confidential and it's pretty uncensorable. There's some asterisks I might have to look into, but it's fine. But then like the sound money part doesn't work. It's like, all right, well then let's use Bitcoin over the Lightning Network or one of those new Lightning wallets or whatever. It's like, well, it's scarce. That's good. It's like the sound money part. It's no money printer, but then it's not really private because some companies, Lightning service provider, whoever, or Spark or one of these things is tracking you. And, is it, okay, kind of lost my train of thought as far as the other one, but yeah, uncensorable. No, not that either. So that's kind of like the mix. I was always been interested in privacy coins, but I didn't care front and center until later. For me, it's one of those like, it's one of those things where it's a precondition is this has to be sovereign money. And I realized, first of all, that you need to have privacy to have a real sovereign money that people can actually use in sovereign ways. Also, even though there's other things like decentralization and other things like that, privacy is the signal in 2026 that when you have a privacy coin, that's what attracts people who care about the sovereignty values to you. If you say, oh, it's decentralized, you see the validator said it, no one cares. Like that's what I cared about in the early days, is like, who can censor it? How does it work? But the way you signal to people, this is the good stuff, is the privacy today.
Yeah. I think this is privacy is like the final boss for crypto, and that's it's going to make or break the industry, because we all know why Big Brother wants to censor, but I think it's also what we need for mass adoption. The more I think about it, especially institutions like big money, they want privacy too, right? It's not like privacy isn't like bad or wrong, right? Everybody wants it, right? And blockchains are way too public, and so I think if we want to get some real adoption, we need genuine privacy, but without backdoors, and that'll be our final battleground is would having crypto without backdoors, and maybe you can go into that, maybe. So like, because I've heard of like there's Kenton network, and there's I talked to someone at Stellar.
Speaking of censorship resistance,
yeah, he's
Poor
having
Kenton.
too many of the good ideas there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry.
Like cut out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you did
you
a
cut out
brief
for a
cutout.
second.
Oh, okay.
You're
Yeah.
saying too many smart things.
Yeah, buddy.
There are crypto projects working on privacy, like Kenton network, and I know Stellar is working on like a private stablecoin, but they have backdoors, right? And they're just, they're just trying to satisfy Big Brother, right? And so, I would definitely, those would be the last I would use for privacy. It's basically just a big giant honeypot, just waiting to be handed off to Big Brother, right? So I'm curious, Joel. Maybe should we get into it then with Dash? You mentioned there's some new update with the privacy. Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So to lead with the headline, Dash has activated shielded transactions based on Zcash's Orchard/Ironwood technology. So essentially, Zcash's privacy, Dash has it now on our second evolution chain. Of course, I got my evolution shirt on today, but basically that means that Dash transactions Dash has Zcash level privacy, but with 1 second finality, which is really cool. So let me give I got to give a little bit of the lore on the whole privacy stuff, right? So way back in the day, most Bitcoin wallets, you got like one address at a time, or one address. Then there was something called HD wallets, or hierarchical deterministic wallets. And like a lot of like the THORChain ecosystem doesn't really, like Multisig does not support this. This is like the OG stuff. But basically every new address every time, which helps with some basic privacy. So like if you pay me 5 times to 5 different addresses, right away, even if they know who I am and what my money is, they don't know. I could have paid 5 people. I could have paid the same person. No one knows until you start to move those funds together, and they're like, oh, it must be the same person if it's in the same transaction. So that's some basic privacy, but like not super great. People have been hammering on Bitcoin privacy since Satoshi was around. Like Satoshi's talking about zero knowledge proofs and things like that, and basically thought something similar to like the Zcash vibe would be really cool to build a Bitcoin version on that, but the technology was just not there. So Dash had a built-in integrated coin join feature in 2014, which basically it's like I have a $20, it's a 10, a 5, and 5 ones, and then so do you. We all throw it in a pot together, mix it around, and then we pull it out, and we still have the same amount, the same denominations, but they're like different people's. And so therefore, if Denny had a crazy night at the strip club and there's some like residue on some of these bills, maybe he doesn't have them anymore, or maybe someone has it here and there, and it's not like, those are his. So it basically breaks up what they call the transaction graph. So when you send, everyone sees this transaction sent for this amount to this address, but they don't know who that was. Even if, say, you withdraw from a centralized exchange, the whole world knows who you are. You do enough of a coin join, and then when you send out of that, it's not necessarily clear that was your money, because it gets kind of all mixed together. Now, all the asterisks to that are, of course, you have to be careful. There's timing. So if someone withdraws a suspiciously unique amount from an exchange, and then a suspiciously similar amount in a short period of time comes from some big coin join out to another address, they're like, I think that might be the same person, especially if they IP trace or something like that. Then kind of breaks down. So you have to be a lot more careful with that, but it still gives a decent amount of privacy. Even today, even this year, I've heard regulators and privacy experts talk about if some thief or some malicious actor thoroughly coin joins funds, it's really hard to trace it, like on chain. Like you can't really, you have to like use other data like amount correlation, or you have to like, do offline data. That's the biggest way people actually get nabbed. Like anytime you hear like a Monero heist or something, that like they busted up some Monero thief or something like that, rarely does it have anything to do with on-chain analytics. It's almost always they connected off-chain dots. So that's kind of that. Monero at the same time had a ring signature, which basically you have a decoy, you have a single real transaction and then a few decoys, and you have to guess which one is the real one. Whereas CoinJoin, they're all real transactions. It's just you don't know whose. Whereas with Monero, there's some that are, fake, I guess. And so probably I would say like the Dash CoinJoin stuff was like a more robust, yet maybe slower, I guess, version of what Monero had up until 2017 when Monero implemented confidential transactions, which, by the way, Adam Back, who people know I'm not a fan of him these days, but he invented this thing called confidential transactions, which basically just says, it hides the amounts in addresses and transactions. So if you're using CT addresses and stuff, you can see I sent from this address to that address to this address. That's all public, but the amount that's being sent is just like, we don't know. We just know the total amount in these addresses together, but we don't know the individual transaction amounts. So if you combine that with ring signatures, which is the Monero from 2017 to today, then you have a pretty strong privacy because the amounts are hidden. And then when you send a transaction, it's like I think the ring size has gotten different, larger over the years, but it's like 16, like 1 of 16. One of these is the real one. Now, in recent years, they've managed to find some ways of sort of like breaking that a little bit. There's a Monero researcher called Rucknium who managed to use some statistical analysis to get the effective ring size down to like 4.2 or something. So therefore, you have like a 25% chance of guessing which is the right transaction. Of course, the amounts are still hidden. So then that's like, it's still hard. And then there's something called a flooding attack, where if you send tons of transactions on the network, you, the attacker, are part of these decoys, the shared decoy set. So if you combine those two together, you could, again, this is like, I don't want to say state level necessarily, but this is like a very coordinated attack. You can get the effective ring size down to like a 1.3. So they say like Waldo hiding in a room of himself and a third of another person. So that starts to get a little bit more scary. Amounts are still hidden, so it's much less useful, and you have to again be very coordinated with this attack. But that's one of the reasons why Monero has been working on full chain membership proofs, which would do it instead of, I could be one of this certain 16 decoy set. The decoy set becomes everyone, but not just everyone today, but every transaction ever. It was one of the transactions that has occurred in Monero at some point. And so that's it's a different way of doing essentially what Zcash does today. Zcash did something with a zero cash protocol. Basically, they created a whole, whereas Monero has two pieces, right? Ring signatures and CT. They created like a whole cryptographic circuit. So the whole privacy thing is one mathematical piece. And it took a lot of math to like figure out how to do it right. And so the Sprout pool, you needed something called a trusted setup, where you have to have like an initial secret that like a group of people had. And then you have to trust that everyone destroys that secret in order to trust the supply of the pool, because someone who, if not everyone destroyed the secret, then there's a possibility you could do like a counterfeiting or something. And this is one of the biggest issues with this, other than the computation. Again, as I mentioned with the 10-minute on the laptop thing, not feasible. Over time, when you move on to the sapling pool and then the orchard pool, when you start to do these increases in the technology, which, by the way, the Zcash cryptographers I would say like best in the world, probably. They've advanced the state of the art of cryptography, not just cryptocurrency, several times with their mathematical proofs. So now we're fast forward to today, the Orchard pool and Ironwood is just like a supply verified Orchard pool. It's the same technology. Right now, the Orchard pool, no trusted setup, and transactions are able to be verified on small mobile devices. So if you have like a really ghetto phone, it might drag, but on like a typical phone today, you could probably generate a proof in like 2-3 seconds or something and send. So you get like space age privacy, as it were, like really fast. So basically Dash focused on a lot of things that weren't a major overhaul in privacy over the years. Is a lot of minor tweaks, like changing the mixing grounds, changing a few other little things to make things more efficient or better or move faster, but improving the privacy function, but it's more like tuning up the machine rather than get a whole new one. And Dash got hit with a lot of regulatory issues due to, well, not even regulatory, I would say FUD. Like the privacy FUD was strong in the 2019 to 2023 era, especially. So Dash was listed on way more exchanges than Zcash or Monero, so had probably more delistings than either of those. And people at the time were very cautious about privacy. And there was a big controversy where some well-meaning Dash investors put in budget or treasury proposals, put in like governance proposals to say we should just remove our privacy function and stay on things at least 2-3 different times, if not more. And each time, of course, they got voted down because the community's been dedicated to privacy. But it was like a 75%, 80% yes, the rest like 20-25% no. So it wasn't like everyone, like 90%, 95%. It was like clearly there was some concerned people. Eventually, the people pushing for trying to be have a calm public presence about privacy, trying to like downplay it, they ended up leaving the project. The people who've been sort of involved in running it since 2022 onward have been much more friendly to that. And especially, I've been really pushing hard for this privacy stuff, like being a giant pest in the ecosystem. We need to do it or no one's going to take us seriously. Blah, 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 blah. We need to. And so the consensus was always, sure, let's do it, but we have other things on our plate. Like we have other things to focus on. We have so much of a backlog. And so I got some privacy grants. I got some developers to start working on some sort of an overhaul, which I don't really need to spend much time talking about because it doesn't seem like thankfully we're not going to do that because we're doing something better. When I was in Monerotopia in February of this year, the lead developer, Sam Westrich, who's a brilliant guy, and it'd be great if you had him on sometime, but he's probably going to be a little shy for a while because he's just, he's working all the time right now. There's a lot to do. But he messaged me. It was like 6:30 in the morning my time, but it was, wherever, different time zone there. And he's like, oh, I think I got I know you've been talking about Zcash a lot. I think I got some basic Orchard proofs running on like a DevNet here. I think I can get it done. I'm like, really? I think I can get it done pretty soon. February, March, April, May, June, July. So in 5 months, we went from not having Zcash level privacy to being the second crypto after Zcash to use Zcash's most modern implementation, being Orchard. There's others like THORChain that have been working on something like that for a while. There's others, like whether PivX or, Zencash, Horizon, that's kind of a different thing now, whether it's Z Classic, Ycash, all those other Zcash fork things are not on this. So in 5 months, we got like a huge privacy overhaul. And Monero's been working on full chain membership proofs for at least 3 years, I think now. So just do you remember the original Iron Man, the first like Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man?
Yes.
Where it's like, Tony Stark built this in a cave, and that kind of thing. It's kind of reminds me a little bit of that, where you have like a crazy hard sprint over 16 plus hour days, cranking out this stuff over 5 months to get something that, like, the leading, at least at the time, Monero was definitely like the leader of the space, like at least one of the top two in terms of what you consider the privacy space. Been working on a similar type overhaul for many years and just haven't deployed it yet. But I'm really hoping they get through with it, because we need more approaches to the same basic problem of privacy, because who knows, there could be something really bad happen in one of the code bases that's not just, a bug, we fix it, but it's like we're seeing a dead end to this technological path. And I think privacy is too important to have just one of those on the table. So I really hope full chain membership proofs launches, kind of like Sarai. Maybe THORChain launches with Monero swaps before Sarai launches. But even if so, I hope Sarai does launch after that, so we have another thing doing things differently in case that there's like, oh my gosh, the way the THORChain guys implemented it, they're going to have to like get rid of it entirely because there's something we didn't anticipate. It's like, well, at least there will be Sarai at the side.
Yeah, it's competition is healthy. It makes us both. We could both learn from each other, and both Sarai and THORChain could improve over time, right? So, and absolutely. So you basically don't have Zcash level privacy now. Does this mean Dash is going to be like an opt-in privacy, just like Zcash? You're going to have like a public and private Dash, or is Dash going to be full private, kind of like pirate chain? It's just their fork is Zcash. What they're doing different. It's all shielded. There is no optionality. How is Dash doing this?
Yeah, it's going to be optional. And I wrote something on how to do this. I wrote some article recently on, private by default. There's just a lot of discussion. This is a really popular talking point in the privacy world as far as like what's default and what isn't. First of all, I believe in the literal definition of private by default, meaning that should be the default option when you use something. It should have the private option should be default. And that means when you build wallets a certain way, when you build exchanges, you build protocols, whatever, you should start with privacy. So the user who starts using these should have privacy first. And what people who say private by default mean typically is there's no transparent option in the protocol. And I don't necessarily believe in that. And I don't think the people saying that, a lot of them, depends on who, believe that. Because first of all, so Monero has view keys today, and they're incoming view keys, meaning if you share a view keys, first this, and I might get something slightly wrong here. I don't think so, but just a minor disclaimer that I haven't done tons of research into the view keys. But from my understanding, today, Monero's view keys, if you give someone a view key for whatever address, now you show all incoming transactions. And you can't show outgoing transactions, though. It's like a technical limitation of how that works. And also, you can't just show some incoming transactions. You have to show all of them. So I would say Xano is implementing a gateway address, which is like a public address type. I would say that according to the purest definition of private by default, neither of those chains are private by default, because there is an option to not be private. And I guess the same thing would go for just about everything has an option for that. Now, where things get tricky is when you have a chain that's transparent by default, and then over the years you try to make it private, which is like what Zcash is doing now, what Dash is doing as well. It's like herding cats. You have to like do a lot of work to move that over. I think that the work will be less as we see the demand for privacy start to come up, and then also as we see like the era of vibe coding, it becomes easier to just change implementations pretty easily. It's not like, we'll get to it later when we have dev manpower. It becomes more, hey, we vibe coded in your the change. Here you go. So it is just inherently more difficult. The thing is, the alternative is to not operate until you have whatever end game privacy setup you have, which in my opinion is not a good thing. Like, again, I've been living on Dash for 10 years. I've been taking care of my privacy. I would be using the bank this whole time if we were waiting for like a ZK thing and just launch like that. On the other hand, you could do a change where now every transaction is like this, but then you end up breaking a lot of integrations and things like that. And so there's like one of the wizardry, one of the wizard moves that the team working on full chain membership proofs did that I think is actually, I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but it seems really cool, is that Monero addresses from before won't have to be changed after the upgrade. You'll just be able to keep using them. This is my understanding. Now, everything else you're already using, like let's say you have like Bitcoin in a normal address. When SegWit came out, you had to use SegWit. You had to move it to a different address. With every Zcash pool, it hasn't just been, yay, we upgraded the privacy. It's better now. You've had to move your funds to a new pool that has the better privacy setup. And so that ends up being just like a constraint typically. So the thing is with the way Dash works now, there's two blockchains. There's the core chain, which is the a Bitcoin based, regular proof of work mined with some extra stuff to make it fast and stuff from the staked side. And then there's the fully staked side, loosely Cosmos based evolution chain. And that's where the privacy is right now, the ZK pool, the Orchard pool. So if you want to do maximum privacy, you have funds in that Orchard pool and you send to another shielded address, and then the network just sees someone send something. They don't see how much it was for. They don't see who it was to. They just see shielded transaction. And also finalized in 1 second. That's what we really want. Now, if you want to send to a legacy Dash address, because again, the whole world has not adopted this new thing. In fact, very few things. That's one of my big tasks now, is to be getting on that. You have to basically bridge back to the core chain, which takes like a minute kind of. And so then the whole world could see someone unshielded and sent this amount to this address. And so it's analogous to when Zcash, when you move to a transparent address, except in the background, it involves an actual chain hop of some kind. And so you can't do that. So like, for example, right now, our friends at NanoGPT, always a great way to use AI tools privately. You can top up with Dash from your shielded pool. It'll send to their transparent normal Dash address, but it will work. You'll just send, and then, a few seconds later, a minute, something like that, it'll go. So my job is to try to keep this hopping from happening as much as possible. So instead of like, oh, you want to pay at bit refill, send, bridge, transparent address. And then there might be some latency there. So like 30 seconds or so. I'm trying to get this up here. So it's just Z to Z. Z to Z makes everything faster and better and more private. And so the more integrations are good. Now, this is, I'll say, do you have any questions or anything? I was going to just segue right into like how this works with like DEXs.
I'm good. Denny, you want to?
No questions, but keep going.
The way Dash's transaction structure works, and might be a little technical for some people, but not for the THORChads or some of the smarter people in the room. When you send let's say Bitcoin or any kind of transaction to a DEX, especially, let's just use the DEX context. Like you want to swap Litecoin on THORChain. You send it in, it observes that the transaction showed up, but it's in the mempool. And then they wait for it to turn into a block and to be included in a block. And then they wait for that chain to have a few different blocks before considering it safe enough where it won't have a rollback, which unfortunately happened with Litecoin like a few months ago, and Near paid a price for that because it was on the Near Intense system. But then you release the transaction there. And so if you want to do a DEX swap of just about anything, it's going to take a few minutes. It's just the way it has to be, because cross-chain DEXs cannot guarantee action of external chains. So like THORChain can just observe a transaction coming in, they can observe how it works, and then they can decide to release a transaction, another chain out. But if something happens at one of those two things, there's no way to go back and like, oh, we had a bug, let's roll back the whole thing, because now you're dealing with three different chains, right? THORChain, the exit chain, and the receiving chain, and you don't control them all. Like they're all decentralized, and if there's an issue in one, it wasn't necessarily in the others. So how can you patch a non-issue unless it's a centralized chain? So it just gets tricky. Now, the way Dash's transactions work is it is a proof of work blockchain. So you do send a transaction and it's in a mempool, and then it ends up being in a block. The difference is the masternode system keeps these close guardrails around it to basically make that a basically paperwork or a formality. So as soon as a Dash transaction gets broadcast, within like us literally 1 second, maybe two, there's something called an instant lock. An instant send lock happens where the masternodes, a quorum of masternodes, which the Dash has like 4,000 masternodes about right now. I have to check, but around 3,000 masternodes. So a subset of those that rotates through. So you don't have to, you don't have to deal with the issues of all of them doing it at the same time, or just trusting a few. It's like a pretty random selection of those. A quorum locks the inputs of a transaction. So when you have a Bitcoin-based transaction, there's inputs and outputs. These are the coins and they go here. And so it locks the inputs. It prevents them from being double spent. So if I send a Dash transaction and then I try to double spend it somewhere else, the network will immediately reject it. They'll see this one has an instant lock. These inputs are locked. We can't send them anywhere else. They have to go. And so that makes it basically permanently final in about a second. So it still has to make it into a block, but it's basically locked to where it has to make it into a block now. So it makes it into a block. Sometimes there's weird variant stuff. A block takes a while, whatever. Maybe it doesn't make it into the next one, but the one after that, it will always make it into a block. Now, there's another function called chain locks, which essentially what that does is that locks in the chain tip block, the latest block, the first seen block on the network that gets created. That becomes the official block, and all other blocks get rejected. So that means if I'm mining and I got a block, and there you go, it's just as soon as a block gets out, it's permanent. Someone else with more hash rate, more hash power, mines a slightly longer chain and tries to overtake this chain. If it doesn't build on my chain locked block, it gets rejected. So there's no chain reorgs. So like, for example, what happened with Litecoin there was a transaction, there was like a 13 block reorg or something where there was a chain that says these are the transactions. A chain with different transactions came in and overwrote that. And then the funds that were in near intents got just reversed and taken out. That's impossible with Dash because chain locks make them irreversible. So a block can't get a chain lock if it has an instant send lock conflict, meaning if I send my transaction, it's finalized in 1 second, and a block that it tries, like I try to build a block that does not include that transaction, it won't get a chain lock. And then the block that does get the chain lock, and then mine is invalid, and anything building off doesn't work. So all this is like background plumbing and stuff. Basically, Dash transactions are secure all the way through. So what the Maya protocol does is, right now, all Dash transactions are considered final, and then you can proceed with a swap after a chain locked block is observed. So you have a transaction and it gets into a block that has one of these chain locks, which is about 2.5 minutes. And all transactions are that way. Recently, Maya implemented something where now they recognize an instant lock. And I think they did like a temporary limit of like up to 5,000 USD value for a swap, where as soon as they see the transaction, they observe an instant lock, and then they will consider that final, and then they'll release funds. So what this means in practice is when you send a Dash transaction to swap for something with Maya, within 40 seconds, there's an outbound. Usually, I've tested this a few times, do like a dash to Bitcoin, dash to USDC or whatever. And so I send the dash, and about 40 seconds later, there's an outbound Bitcoin or USDC. So yeah, I'll take a little breath there.
I think that's great. I mean, that's the one thing that, people want to know is like when you have infrastructure that's financial, if you send a transaction, you should send it, right? I've never had a moment where I use a bank card where I send it and then there was a reorg. That's not a thing that exists, right? So I think it's really good of Maya protocol to basically grant that as an instant finality, and I think that's a huge advantage when it comes to DEX volume, right? So if you add Dash, you want to add that because the DEXs that do not support instant finality, what you were describing, then they might not get the volume. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, it depends, because if you're a trader of some kind, or you just want a different coin kind of thing, and you want like a whale, I think a whale can typically wait like a couple minutes. Like if they swap a big load of Dash to Zcash, or hopefully the other way around, then they're okay waiting a couple, like 5 minutes for the whole thing to be done. So that's where a lot of volume comes from. Unique use cases come from the fast finality, though, where, well, first of all, faster is just always better. I'm sure some people would be like, well, I'd rather do Dash to this than Zcash to this because it's faster. But there's something that happens where if you're waiting around for completion, then every millisecond becomes an issue. And so if you are using a payment use case, which again, that's what Dash is primed for. If I want to pay Denny, but he's like, I don't know, freaking Bitcoin maximalist for some reason, and he's just like, I only take Bitcoin. All right, well, I'm gonna send you some Dash, and it'll end up as Bitcoin. I have Dash, you have Bitcoin. I'm gonna make us both happy. Go through the Maya protocol. 40 seconds later, you have the Bitcoin. It shows up. And of course, you have to wait for confirmations if that's what you do, but like at least you see it right away. And so if you're doing, let's just say you're a small merchant, you're selling, I don't know, selling guns on the side of the road or whatever you do out there in Arizona. And I'm like, oh, that Romanian AK looks nice. Let me get that. And it's like, all right, I only take Bitcoin though. Screw your shitcoin. All right, here we go. Pull it out. Boom. You see it within 40 seconds. You see it, and I can go take it home. That's like a real world application where it's not like, oh, I'm waiting for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Obviously, for like a very busy coffee shop, 40 seconds can be an eternity, So, but for the most part, you can now do real point of sale type transactions. You can pay for something, or let's just say you need to like top up a prepaid card with Bitcoin that only accepts Bitcoin, although there's plenty to do Dash. Maybe it's an unrealistic example, but let's just say you need to top up something and you need it done in a few minutes. Like the 40 seconds, it's just great peace of mind. Otherwise, it's like, okay, it could be 5 minutes later. Hey, your card declined because it didn't have the balance yet. I'm like, oh, well, try it again in a couple minutes. Okay, now it's good. It just, you start to have use cases, and then the volume, per transaction volume is not going to be very high probably for these kinds of things. But the aggregate, the use case it unlocks is pretty huge. And then you start to really amp that up. So for example, if you do a dash to anything with a 40-second finality, basically, you can now spend any coin that is supported on the Maya protocol, essentially, even if you have Dash in a point of sale environment. Obviously, again, high level fast coffee shop might be a little bit annoying, but we can even just like run through in fact, let's see if the 40 seconds is good right now. So let's see here. All right, total's 34.79. There you go. All right, just send. Should be going through any second now. Where are the straws? Oh, they're over there. Okay. Well, and sorry, what was the Wi-Fi password real quick? I'm going to be here for the what? Okay. Yeah, I got that. All right. Sounds good. Yeah, when do you close again? Okay, I'm going to be here for a little time. All right. Okay, well, all right, look, okay, it went through. Good. So it's kind of something like that.
We still had 20 seconds left.
I got 20 as well. Yeah.
I ran out of things to say. I didn't rehearse my script enough. But the point is, you can make it work. It's a little. So if you are paying and it's like you and there's like maybe one or two other people in line, it's fine. If it's like a bunch of people in line, but now imagine stretching that out to like 5 minutes. Then it's like, here, let me pay. I'm going to be back in like, 5 minutes. Just service the next customer and go through. But then they have you have to switch the point of sale to the next transaction. And like, if it's then it starts, like, it just starts to break. It does not work.
Yeah,
like 40 seconds is the limit.
Well, but,
right?
Joel, but to help prove your point is that it takes time, right? To get like, we've come pretty far in the last 15 years to get to your 40 seconds, right? Give another 15 years. Right. And we'll get down to 0.4 seconds. Right. Like it's right. We're so used to, we want everything now and instant satisfaction. But technology still takes time to develop. And I'm sure it'll just get faster. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that like I have to break down. So like the Dash part of the transaction is like 1 second. So the 39 seconds are all Maya protocol inner workings. Some of that is like the block time of the Maya chain, for example, which is, what is it? How many seconds is it? 2 seconds, 4 seconds? What is it today?
I assume it's 6, the same as THORChain, but I really don't
Didn't
know.
they? I thought they reduced it. I could have sworn that, because I know there was proposals to reduce it on THORChain, and I just vaguely remember Maya reducing it first or something. Like it was an experimental feature that they were going to do first and then THORChain later. I don't know, but it's a few seconds. So let's just say you miss a block. It's 6 seconds. And then it's another block. So it's like you send it. All right. It's in a block. That's 12 of those seconds. And then there's like, however long it takes to just like the logic to get around and all of those to figure stuff out. There might be an outbound delay of a couple seconds. I don't know, but then it goes out. So on the Maya side, we've done all we can. It's just cutting that down bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. And then we get it to like something where it's like, now it's 20 seconds. Now I just have to go beep. And I'm like, all right, should be there soon. Where's the straws? What's the Wi-Fi? All right, I got it. Oh, it's done. And then it's not as awkward. Now, where this hits the privacy thing is a little trickier, because the same for any DEX that accepts the native Dash private transactions, it's the same experience, the same instant everything. The challenge is most DEXs accept like the regular Dash. And so if I want to send from a shielded pool on Dash to that, I send a transaction out that it does not have inputs. And this is a weird technical thing that, people might, have either of you guys ever experienced a Coinbase transaction? Meaning not the exchange, but like a mined transaction. In like Bitcoin, that's pretty much the only case for this in Bitcoin is when it literally new coins get created and they get dropped out of the sky. So if you look at a mined block, all those transactions in there have no inputs because they just got created. There you go. Output only. So instant send on Dash cannot work because there's nothing to lock. Like you can't lock it. So therefore it's just a regular unconfirmed transaction until it makes it into a block. So if I want to, let's say if I want to swap from my shielded Dash to Bitcoin using Maya, it's going to be 2-3 minutes because the Dash shows up without that instant lock. And so then it ends up in a block, which is chain locked, and that's good enough. And then they accept it. So now we have a little bit of latency. So in order to have that Dash to anything like that, I have to withdraw to transparent first. And a couple of minutes later, then I'm like, all right, now I do the swap, and then it's instant. So now there's a little bit of latency built into that. The only way to solve that on the Dash end would be for an exchange to either just have wildly loose security policy and just be like, as soon as we see it existing somewhere in some mempool somewhere, we're going to release the other funds, which I wouldn't recommend necessarily. It's either that, or you'd have to recognize the other chain that Dash has. And I guess in a THORChain Maya AMM style function, you'd have to basically have a completely separate, like you'd have to have a completely separate Dash pool, like a different, like treat it like a completely different blockchain. And so then you have that, and then it can be fast, but then that's like a lot of extra work. You'd have to kind of make it worth someone's while for that. I know that might be a better fit for like some kind of a intent space system where you get to just have a tiny, a much smaller liquidity pool or whatever. So you can just go from Zdash to the asset like immediately without having to duplicate the pool in two different ways. Or one thing you could do is you could just have it so that like this would be interesting to see, by the way, for like whether THORChain or Maya wants to do this, or maybe this is just a ridiculous idea in my head. But what if one of the two, as a differentiating factor, got rid of their L1 Dash pool and just migrated it all to the different chain? So now you can have those instant private swaps. That would be interesting. So you don't have to. You still have to do a different code base integration, I guess, because it's even though it's technically Dash, it's more Cosmos based. It's not as like Bitcoin based, and it's all in Rust and stuff. None of this C++ stuff. So it'd be a different integration, probably easier than the first one was, maybe. But then you just move the same Dash, because it is still Dash on both chains. You just one of them have the Evo pool and the other have the regular pool, and you could go into either one from whatever, but then you serve the purpose of having the private stuff immediately. And also Dash has tokens on this other chain. Not a lot of use out of them yet, but you could then, by supporting that chain, now start to have a bunch of tokens. So if we get like a popular stablecoin or something that's on Dash, then you can have a pool for that, for example. So just some interesting things to think about. I'm always thinking about ways to get more privacy out there and more good user experiences. So I'm just brainstorming a bunch of different ways that could work. It could also be that THORChain and even Maya are more just the access DEXs, meaning like this is, you want Dash, you want Zcash, you want whatever, we got you. And that's kind of what we do. And the payments specific, really fast private use cases are something that we have to figure out an external solution for. But just some brainstorming and all that.
If I just bought normal Dash on Maya, like I can, in my wallet, I can convert that to private. I can go and do so. Yeah.
And so the jump that way is way faster. So if you have Dash, you press a button, it's in a ZK pool in like a second. It's just that when you go from unshielded to Dash on the regular chain, you can unshield on the Evo chain, it's instant, like 1 second. But it's when you go back to the legacy chain that way where you have like a couple minute delay. But that way it's instant.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just trying to think the benefit to the user to have the shielded pool on THORChain.
The way you described it almost sound like you could, if just technically, if THORChain had regular and then my protocols already has a shielded, that you could have the two different chain clients or however you describe it, and they concatenate off each other. And so you get instant finality each way. That's kind of what I interpret what you were meaning, but interesting idea. I'd be curious to see what Starts would have to say about that.
Yeah. So I had the big drawback of Maya today is asset access. So like I can go to Zcash, I can go to Bitcoin, I can do it to USDC on Arbitrum and ETH and stuff. And those are the big ones. But like if I want to go to Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or Solana or some of these other ones, well, that's like a THORChain thing. So if there's like one chain does one versus the other, there's always going to be a little bit of that kind of stuff. But also if I want to go from one coin to another, as long as I can, that's more important. It's just that when you want this like fast latency or the super private stuff or whatever, that might be like a specific payment application. So it might not be as necessary for everything. I did have a brief chat with our Mexican buddy, and Alux, and there was some talk about maybe there's like a Maya intense thing. I think there's some super secret thing he's been talking about for a while. And, you know, he and I are similar in that way, that we're always thinking way far ahead and working on something cool. But like, it's not like, it's like, so how's that thing? Oh, yeah, it's a ways away. So it might be a thing where the shielded dash to anything kind of thing is a Maya intense project or something, but like you still like all the volume and all the big trades and everything still goes through the main chains here. So
I was just
something to think about.
wondering. I was just wondering, theorizing. You know, when for Dash going live on THORChain, do we, instead of doing regular Dash, do we try and just go straight for the private one? And then that would create a unique pool on THORChain. That'd be a unique pool liquidity.
Mhm.
Do you think that would attract users, volume? Would it be hard to arbitrage? Yeah.
I don't think it would be hard to arbitrage, because the thing is, with the two pools, you can always go
But what if
from
we only
one
had
to,
the one? What if we only started just with the private?
yeah. Well, I was saying, I'm considering Maya has
Oh,
the regular L1 pool.
yeah.
THORChain could have the L2 pool, and probably it probably makes sense to have that the L1 the L2 pool be the transparent one, so you can send shielded right in, because having a whole shielded balance on a a DEX, which could get hacked or drained and you just don't see it, or that sounds like a nightmare. But as long as people can go from private to that, so it's like someone sent this amount in, and then this amount came out to someone. Like, that's how Maya works today, I believe, right? You can send from shielded to Zcash, and then you can send from the Zcash pool is still transparent, but then you could deposit and withdraw straight from a shielded pool. So it would be something like that. I think if you wanted to differentiate, it would make sense that way. But I guess the point with arbitraging is arbitraging would be as far as I'm aware, no latency. And so you could withdraw from the Dash pool on THORChain if it's on the Evolution chain, and go straight to the Maya pool on the Maya Dash pool on the core chain in one transaction. Just go, and it just works. There would be there's a bunch of like technical devils in the details of all that, but for the most part, it should just be like, imagine you have Zcash, a shielded pool on Maya, and an unshielded pool on THORChain, and then there you go. It's something kind of similar to that.
Mm.
Now, depending on how things work, so I mentioned about we were doing this whole thing, and I was trying to spearhead the privacy improvements for Dash. And so I got a grant from Power Up Privacy, this nonprofit, to improve Dash's privacy. And I hired some developers, and we started to work on some things. And then the lead Dash developer just kind of like built something way better than what I was working on, like immediately, like quickly. So now what I'm doing with those remaining funds is I'm dispersing some grants to people that implement Dash's privacy tech. So it's, when you start giving away money, it goes away really fast. But there's a possibility. I think I could justify some kind of a grant for a DEX that wants to implement like Dash's privacy pool. So we'll talk about that. I mean, obviously open source discussion on everything. I chatted with Alex as well. I think that maybe it might make sense for the three of us to have like an offline convo together or something like that, and just hash out how that looks out. But yeah, either way, I think it'll be, it's good stuff coming.
Nice. I want to ask you, kind of going back to Dash, 1 second finality. Like, this is an ongoing issue with crypto in general, but you mentioned Bitcoin, 10-minute block time. So maybe waiting up to an hour if you want to be really sure that the transaction is settled. How is Dash doing it in 1 second? And are there trade-offs there? Is there something else that you're weak on because of that?
Yeah, so I don't think there's many trade-offs at all. Let me just start with that. it's an architectural difference. So, and this is where it's a fun conversation, because this is about as nerdy as I get, because then we start getting to talking about nonces and weird stuff like that. I start to tune out. But like the way proof of work blockchains go is you have a miner. They start processing transactions or whatever. That's in all the nodes, all the miners' mempools, which is a memory pool of transactions, the waiting queue. And then as they start finding blocks, they cram those transactions into blocks. And then you form a blockchain. That's the way that works. When the security is provided by the longest chain, meaning the most accumulated proof of work, the most work that went behind a certain chain is the valid one. And so there is inherently some sort of malleability in Bitcoin and other proof of work transactions. In fact, Bitcoin and other purely proof of work blockchains have no permanent finality whatsoever. This is one of those like elephant in the room things people don't talk about. It's a little bit more of like a semantic difference in practice sometimes, but sometimes it's the least semantic difference at all. Every single Bitcoin transaction on the chain today, as far as I'm aware, is theoretically reversible. No matter hundreds and hundreds of blocks in, there could be, in theory, some way longer chain out there that's being mined in secret that someone could publish and go, all your stuff is invalid, and you just erase it all. So every time you have an exchange, a DEX, or whatever that waits for confirmations, the only reason why you'd want more than one confirmation should be enough, right? It's just valid. Like, the transactions are valid. The only reason you have multiple is because it's a probabilistic finality, meaning it's secure, but there's a chance that it might not be. It might be reversed. Okay, 2, less chance. 3, less chance. 6, there's the chance is so small now. We're just going to deal with it. There's not a single exchange, DEX, etc. for Bitcoin or any proof of work chain that is 100% sure those payments are final. And that's one reason why, like, exchanges have to process volume. They have to make business. And at some point, they just have to just roll the dice. Be like, look, the money that we're making from processing these trades is high enough to where we're okay with the risk. And then some chain gets 51% attacked to shit, and they're like, all right, now you have to wait 3 days for your Bitcoin SV deposit to be considered like valid. And there's no way, as far as I'm aware, in the purely proof of work way, there's no way around this now, or there's no like real way around this. Even things like, say, the Quiet Network or Caspa or some of these very fast proof of work chains, you still get you can get a several millisecond blocks. You still need a certain number of blocks before you're like, I think it's pretty secure. And so that's usually 10 seconds or whatever. So even the best proof of work chains struggle to get below 10 seconds to a reasonable finality. It's just an inherent blocker of the system. Now, there are some, so for example, Bitcoin Cash, as far as I'm aware, they've been changing a lot of stuff. So I want to make sure that, to have the disclaimer that I think this is still true, but it was for years at least, had a 10 block rolling checkpoint where basically every 10 blocks, you can't reorg past that. So that basically means that after 10 confirmations, it is actually irreversible pretty much. Now, what the challenge of that, the drawback is, if an attacker publishes a bad chain, or does something, if they manage to get 10 blocks deep, then their chain is, at least that far, is permanent now. So you can't reverse an attack in that case. So it's still, you have to deal with whoever has the most hash rate. You still have to make sure you don't get 51% attacked, but that kind of makes it less like that. So proof of stake is inherently a lot better because of I don't hesitate to say better. I think it's probably better, but I'd say it's a lot more convenient here because you can have a valid block much faster. So, for example, if you can produce a 1 second block on a proof of stake system, with proof of work, because you have to compete for finding the block, you have to compete, the miners have to compete. It just has to be longer, because if you had 1 second blocks on a proof of work chain that was monolithic, not a sharded chain, but like a single chain, then there'd be orphans all the time. People would be competing, invalid blocks. It would just be a disaster. So you have to have at least a certain amount. I think one of the fastest chains it's a monolithic proof of work chain is Digibyte with 15-second block times, but it's really hard to get under that. And there's a bunch of other, issues that come with that I won't kind of go into now. But basically, that with proof of stake, you can crank out blocks like really fast. Like Solana, you could go like 200 millisecond blocks or whatever they have these days. Now, that's where the speed of blocks comes from. What something like Solana does, and I really have to do much deeper research and all this kind of stuff, but a lot of those, especially really fast proof of stake chains, they have optimistic finality, which is another kind of like probabilistic finality. It's the similar type thing where when you have blocks, if you have a Solana block that comes out immediately, one confirmation, that's pretty good, but there's still a chance it's not final. You have to wait like 10 blocks deep. So Solana blocks, you get a confirmation with Solana faster than Dash, but you get permanence faster with Dash, like finality faster with Dash than Solana today. Because Solana, you have to wait like 10 blocks or something. So that's like, I don't know how many, like, is it like, or 20 blocks or something, like 10 seconds or something, 5 seconds, whatever it is, before you're like, yeah, this is irreversible at this point, pretty much. Whereas with Dash, the way it works is you get consensus from the whole network, and then they stamp it that this is the valid transaction, and it's permanent after that point. So I'd have to like, this is where I'm like, it's like when you start talking to a pretty smart LLM, but the context window gets really long and it starts to be like hiccuping here and there. I'd have to go that last mile for the research as far as like the exact thing of the permanence versus not permanence, but basically that's the difference. So with Dash, it's one of the only permanent proof of work chains, but because it uses this second layer that other networks don't want to do. Decred has a second layer, or Decred has a staked system where stakers get to sort of validate blocks. So therefore you get finality that you can't 51% attack, for example. But they have a different function. I don't know if you've heard of eCash, not the one coming up soon, but like the Amari Sachet's Bitcoin Cash Fork eCash. They have an avalanche-based consensus that also uses staked nodes to provide what they call pre-consensus or finality, even though the blocks on the proof of work chain take longer. So everything that has instant finality in a proof of work system has to have some kind of an asterisk, which comes from a staked system, because to generate the proof of work, the work takes time, and you just can't get finality quick enough. And because of if there's no external guarantee of finality, then you have to wait for the longest chain. Therefore, it's always going to be probabilistic, and you just don't have that. And so why I don't think it's smart to not have this. Let me just be clear about the bias here. I just think, like, look, you just get a better system. I think what Bitcoiners would say if they don't like a system like Dash, when there's plenty of back in my day kind of nonsense that people would say, but as far as like the objections that seem to be like a reasonable point of view, even though I disagree with them, would be, first of all of the block reward in Bitcoin goes to miners. In Dash, 20% goes to miners, 20% goes to a treasury to spend to do like things like pay my salary, developers, things like that, and 60% goes to the Evolution masternodes that run the Evolution network entirely, because that's a proof of stake chain entirely, but also just the regular masternodes that provide special services for the main chain. So some of the money has to go somewhere else to pay for these things. And then I guess Bitcoiners are like, we'd rather put all the money towards miners because we believe this security model is better, or we want to do this. So we don't want to dilute it by doing something else. There's also the thing of, well, whales could have a bunch of coins, and then the masternode network or whatever staked element could be in the hands of a few entities that have the money. So if you don't worry about if the coin distribution isn't good, then you could have a centralizing factor there. That's an objection. Now, I would posit that, first of all, whales are always going to have influence, like Sailor and BlackRock and them, but also that the proof of work system ends up centralizing much more than a stake system, because anyone can have Dash. Anyone can put it towards a masternode or an Evo node or whatever and participate in the network. With mining, you have to basically do it at industrial scale, with pools, and you are more visible on a map of planet Earth via energy exposure. It's hard to mine in secret like that, especially at the industrial scale. So I think that proof of work is more centralizing than proof of stake once you have the distribution figured out. But there's like those objections where people are like, well, we don't want to dilute the money coming in for this, and we also don't want to give power to stakeholders in a certain way to determine the network, because we don't really like that. I like Dash's system personally for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, tons of bias here, let's be clear about that. There's some chains like Xano that do a hybrid system where stakers and miners take turns producing blocks. It's a little bit more of a 50-50 thing. What I like about Dash's system for old school proof of work heads is it is 100% proof of work chain, as far as like the core chain just works. Mind, if you take out all the masternodes, all the stake stuff, it just runs like a Litecoin. It just runs like a regular mined chain. The stuff on top of it offers extra finality guarantees, but masternodes cannot influence which blocks get created or not by miners, or which one is the first seen block on the network, whatever. They just get to they have a veto power over other things, but they don't get to choose. It's kind of like a tiebreaker vote almost, right? Where you don't get to imagine you get to just, it's like a governor in a I guess a governmental setting where the governor can decide, like veto legislation, but they can't propose legislation. The legislature has to do that. So the miners are the legislature. They still propose legislation and vote on it. But with Dash, you have a governor that can veto things, basically, and just be like, not this one, but yes, this one. But they can't just make stuff up. The governor can't be like, you know what, let's do a completely different bill, throw that in, I'm going to rubber stamp it. It just doesn't work that way. So because of that, it's not like a half and half proof of work, proof of stake system. It's layers on top, where if you annihilate the proof of stake layer, the miners keep moving. Also, as far as I'm aware, if there's a mining issue and like the proof of work chain on Dash grinds to a halt, the evolution chain, which is purely staked, would keep running independently. So it's kind of like two separate systems that they all kind of work in conjunction. So for Bitcoin, so if you want to be pure proof of work, you have to have some kind of finality, like you have to deal with the way the system works. You have to be like, well, it's going to be a while. It's going to be probabilistic. There's some, like, I think the Quai network is probably the best pure proof of work example of making it work the best they can, because with a sharded chain, you get super fast blocks. So by the time you have enough confirmations to be probabilistically final, it's like 10 seconds or so. I don't think it's that bad. I think 10 seconds is pretty good. And then also with stuff like the proof of entropy minimum, you've had THORChain and all them on. I'm sure they've explained it better than I could, but it makes it harder to do these sorts of attacks and stuff. But there just are inherent trade-offs. And with proof of stake, especially with a proof of stake system, you don't have all those trade-offs, but then you put your chain's fate in the hands of coin holders. And some people don't like that for whatever reason. There's the whole thing, oh, it's easier to have governments just buy up a bunch of stuff, or if a few whales control it, it's just like, there's some, like, I have a 4-hour podcast series on my own personal channel just on this proof of work versus proof of stake versus hybrid model debate. And if you want to go deep into it, you can go down the rabbit hole, but it's an ongoing debate. Now, the difference between Dash's finality model and things like, let's say, a Solana or whatever, with that optimistic finality, where things like Solana want to be fast, want to prioritize fast speed over security sometimes. And that makes it sound like I'm saying it's insecure. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying in order to get a transaction through in like under a second, really. A second's kind of like the internet speed limit, because you have to propagate a transaction across nodes all over the globe and get consensus with nodes all over the place. The time it takes for that data to fly all over the node is like 1 second. You can't get faster than a second, basically. So if you have like a 200 millisecond confirmation in something like Solana, the whole network has definitely not seen that transaction, because either that's impossible based on internet speeds, like the speed of light is a constraint here, right? Or you have a tightly clustered geographic center of nodes. So therefore, let's say all the Solana nodes are in Europe or in the US, for example. So you can get half-second finality. But if someone's running a node in Australia, you cannot include that because it'd be too slow to get all the way over there and all the way back. So there's just some trade-offs with that. I'm not super interested in like nitpicking, like, oh, Dash is faster than Solana for finality, and then like, well, but we get semi-finality quicker. I think if a Dash transaction shows up, you see it in a mempool. That can usually be 200, 400 milliseconds, maybe even less sometimes. That is the equivalent of a one Solana block, basically. And it's just that the instant send lock is the equivalent of like 10 Solana blocks or whatever. But like at this point, it's just like, how do you configure your software to accept things or not accept things? And, it's nitpicky there. So that's the whole like finality thing. Now, the thing that makes it, this is where I dump on Bitcoiners a little bit. The way they've achieved instant finality is through stuff like Lightning, where it's not finality because the Bitcoin is still caught up in some sort of a channel somewhere, and you probably have it, but not necessarily. And there's a bunch of other things and trust assumptions. And so Bitcoiners seem like, oh, we like things righteous here. We don't want to go here and make some concessions to like a master network for Dash. We don't want to go here. That's too much. But we want to go all the way over here for centralized Lightning hubs to achieve a shitty version of what Dash does. And I don't like that. I think it's a silly trade-off, but then that's just kind of where we ended up.
Isn't it like if you went at maximum efficiency to do that transition to go like full adoption of Lightning, it would take like 80 years? Like it's something like that. It's not a deal. And it reminds me of what you said, Joel, about back in my day, that's kind of like, yeah, but Kenton at a time, I was with this old scuba diver. We weren't scuba diver. We just happened to meet in public, and he was ripping on me because I was using a computer to go diving, because back in his day, he had to pull out a chart and, as he's doing his safety stops to come to the surface. And I'm like, what are you, like, I'm underwater like 10 to 20 meters. I don't want to do any thinking. You know what I mean? It's like, well, back in my day, we used to do surgery without anesthetics. Like, was that better? No, moron. So anyway, that really resonated with me, Joel.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, you have to, like, the world marches on, time marches on. I'm old school in tons of ways. Like, I cook from scratch. we have a garden in the back. Like, I chop all the wood that we use to heat the house all long New Hampshire winter long. I drive a stick shift. Like, there's a bunch of old school things, but I understand I make choices based on like, a lot of these super old school choices are just because I like it more. Like the wood is actually we're saving a ton of money by doing that way, and I get a workout chopping it. But like stick shift is just, I like it better. And also stick shift cars, like especially older ones, don't have all this built-in surveillance to the same extent as modern cars do. So like there's like reasons, but the modern world, you should use the newest stuff, right? You should just use the most modern AI stuff. Back in my day, we wrote our own lines of code. Back in my day, we used a quilled pen to write our scripts. Like, no, get out of here. Come on. Like, we have to get to the modern era. And that's something that Dash has done. Has been very evolutionary. Again, evolution has been evolve over time, change to do what you really want to do, and keep the old school things like decentralization, like censorship resistance, like a commitment to privacy, like a scarce supply that you can verify, like those kinds of things that are timeless old school virtues. Like no VC money, no whatever, like just mine from scratch, whatever. Keep all that stuff, but make it work in the modern era. And to other people's credit, so one of my biggest criticisms of Bitcoin Cash over the years has been, oh, we're living in the past. Like we're Bitcoin, but that scaled. It's like, great, but you're not. So do something better. Last few years, they've really been building a lot of cool scripting capabilities in, and I think they're even discussing reducing the block time to like 1 minute instead of 10 minutes, which is a giant symbolic departure. It's not a huge departure, but symbolically it's a big departure of like, now you're very different from the Bitcoin that the Bitcoin of the past. But I think it evolve or die. Like the amount of things I see, like the bad decisions made by the Ethereum world, the bad decisions, obviously the Bitcoin world, but like so many of these other things, like in the modern age, you have to get instant or very fast finality. You have to have security. You can't just do this whole Litecoin. Well, the network acted as intended. Sorry, near intents, you lost 600 grand. You can't do that today. You can't be like, well, it's always been war. You can't reason your way out. The reality is no one will do business with you. You can't do that. You need privacy. You can't be like, well, and like, this is one of those things with like I'm interested to see how the Quai privacy on the way the Qi network works, how it shakes out. I'm a little more pessimistic. I think they need to do some ZK thing, but if they want to survive, I think they eventually will, but maybe not in the short term. But again, you have to start implementing these things. You have to have some kind of a programmability for basic money stuff. You have to have like a username setup you can send to. You have to be able to have invoices built into the system so you don't have to like bolt on some other thing. You have to have a good user experience. You have to just all these kinds of things you have to just do, or you just won't compete. And the biggest actors are the least competitive sometimes because they don't have to. The smaller ones are scrappy, but the delta between those is like compressing, where the scrappy ones are coming up, and as soon the faster something like Bitcoin or Ethereum gets dethroned, like each dethroning makes the dethroning cycle less and less and less, and so it makes your ability to be complacent go really down. Like Bitcoin's been super complacent for a while, and I think they have a reckoning coming. Ethereum was complacent, and they kind of lost their lunch to Solana already. I don't know if Solana's complacent. I don't think they have room to be complacent, because if they stumble, someone like Near is just going to come right past them and just eat all their lunch immediately. It's not going to be 5 years. It's not going to be 10 years. It's going to be like 3 months and they're done. So they have to stay at the top. And so, something that I've been a little bit critical of some recent attitudes in the Zcash world have been very conservative. Like, we'll just do encrypted Bitcoin at scale. That's all we do. We don't want any of this hybrid proof of stake stuff. We don't want shielded tokens. We want to get rid of the memo field or something. So we want to just be like pure like that. And I think that you got to be really careful when you intentionally don't do improvements that are improvements. You don't have to do changes for the sake of changes if they're not an improvement, but you should improve things. You should give finality, like was it called Crosslink Crosslink in Zcash, where they're trying to do a hybrid system where you have a staked finality layer, so you get finality after a couple blocks, like permanent finality, and not this, well, which way do the miners go kind of thing. I think they need that or something like that, and it's controversial right now. Shielded tokens are a little controversial, so Dash is going to get them first probably, and we'll see how that works. But I think you need to keep building. You keep doing better. Obviously this has been a big subject internally in THORChain that I've kind of seen just on the outskirts. I haven't paid super close attention to, but the whole of like, it's on. The race is on. Near Intense is doing great. Maya's there. Chain chain flips there. There's like Harbor DEX. There's a few others coming out. There's just so many DEX, so many cross-chain DEXs now, and there's a certain evolve or die attitude, I guess, that needs to persist. What are some of the more controversial improvements in THORChain that have been talked about recently that some people are like, we need to do this to stay competitive, and others are like, no, they don't, they do it the wrong way, and we need to just stick to our old school guns?
I don't think there's anything controversial. I guess app layer was a bit
App layer,
controversial, a bit
privacy. Yeah.
but I don't know. I don't think there is anything anymore. I think generally the community is pretty largely on board with most things, everything. And the app layer thing was just, that was more internal. Like, is Rajira going to siphon off, fees, money from THORChain? And is it, but I think generally everyone agrees having app layer is good for THORChain to make it us competitive, to have the smart contracts and have all those different features. To be honest, Joe, I actually, I am sure I'm biased and maybe I do have some blinders on, but I don't think so. You mentioned all these other cross-chain DEXs, and it's like, hey, just because you offer cross-chain, you call yourself a DEX, doesn't necessarily mean you are a DEX. And I don't think anyone comes close to THORChain as far as being an actual decentralized exchange. I think these other platforms you mentioned have lots of elements of centralization and censorship. And so, I think THORChain's still the leader. I don't see anything close. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of agree, I guess, in terms of like THORChain and Maya are kind of like the 1-2 punch of like, those are the ones that are staying the path. Like, I do think that the DPRK test is important, and I wish there was a different test we could apply, right?
We all do. Yeah. It's like, to reiterate, we said we don't condone illicit activity, or whatever, but it's an unfortunate truth. If criminals use it, it works. And it's not that we want them to use it, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So the thing is, I believe these principles like decentralization and censorship resistance are timeless. I don't know if the protocols that run them necessarily have that same guarantee of being timeless. Like, what is it? The market can be irrational, longer than you can remain solvent. And the thing is, what got me, so I've believed in freedom my whole life. I've just been a freedom guy. That's just what I am. But what got me interested in all this stuff has been studying economics, which is the science that puts numbers behind, in this is why I care about it, at least. It puts numbers behind why freedom is better. It's not just, oh, I personally like free choice. Well, I don't like free choice. And then, well, I respect your opinion, but I like mine better. It's not just like a moral discussion, although I do believe for moral reasons in maximum human freedom. But I also believe in practical reasons. There's a reason why every single economy in the world that is super well off is a free market economy. Even places that are locked down and censored, like communist China, have a lot of very capitalist things. Like, the top AI models that are coming out of China are open source. They're open models. Anyone can run them. I'm going to run Kimi K3 this weekend. I'm going to see if I can do that. But the point is, like, freedom produces prosperity, and prosperity produces people not dying and having shitty disease lives. Like, it's a humanitarian issue. I think prosperity is a giant humanitarian issue. And the more money you have, like, obviously, if only a few people get money and everyone else is starving and stuff, that's not a good outcome. But generally speaking, if you don't have restrictions, you have freedom, you get more aggregate money. And then the average, I think they said that the per capita GDP of Mississippi, which for anyone who knows the U.S. knows that that's like it's not a place people would want to move, because it's not a very prosperous place, but it's richer than the UK, for example. And if
Canada too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting rough out there. And so if you compare a lot of these things, like if you imagine like open borders completely, like if you just eliminated national borders, anyone could move anywhere they want. Where would everyone move? Like overwhelmingly, there's a small band of countries where it's like mostly US, but then also, you could say Canada, you could get UK, the Nordics, Japan, South Korea, or whatever. But then the population of the planet would just go vroom, all into those countries immediately and deal with worse food, a culture they don't know, challenge. Like they deal with so much stuff, but just the prosperity is so much better, and everyone understands a better life for their family. Like whenever I think about like, my father was Mexican, my grandfather was Italian, and my grandmother's half German, half Scottish. Like I come from all kinds of different immigrant backgrounds. Only about 8% of me is some indigenous to the Americas or whatever. But these are all immigrants, and you go back of like, where did they come from? Oh, a great place in Italy. And like, what was life like when they came to America? It's just like, man, some rough times, like growing up in the Great Depression, selling ice cream on the streets as a 12-year-old kid, like those kinds of things, like just to like make it by, and like, oh, I can only eat ice cream one time a year because otherwise we're not going to have food, and like just those kinds of struggles and just like incompatibility. My great grandfather left and the U.S. went back to Italy because he couldn't make it. He didn't like it. It was incompatible. And so my grandfather stayed. He's one of the children that he left behind here. So like it's rough, but the prosperity is just such a lure. I mean, people even move to freaking Dubai for crying out loud looking for more money. I mean, I don't know why they do that, but the point is, freedom begets prosperity. And I think that really makes things, that's why this has to work out. How did I get on this freedom prosperity?
You went on a bit of a tangent. We're talking about THORChain and the other DEXs.
Oh yes,
yeah.
The free market has to reward these things. So when you get to these principles of, oh, I like freedom, I like this, I like that, that's meaningless without the math of freedom. And so the math of freedom is when you have a free society, you don't know how it's going to benefit people, but it does. And you start seeing the numbers on the page eventually. You start seeing everyone wants to move to this country. You get to see people have more money in this country. Like, why? It's because the no-let regulations let people find a way to make that happen. So I think over a long enough term, uncensored systems will provide more opportunities for prosperity than censored systems. And so right now, in a practical sense, let's just say, I mean, obviously I have a lot of respect for the Near team and everything like that. And I really am a fan of Near Intents as a product. The way it is now through the one-click swap API or whatever, it is 99.9% uncensored. Whereas THORChain would be 100% uncensored. So far, that 0.1% is the DPRK, right? That's literally it. So if you're not sending through North Korean transactions, then you don't really have a competitive advantage today, right now, running THORChain necessarily. So unfortunately, what that tends to do with the market is then it becomes, oh, this is the criminal chain. Everyone uses that, which, I think it's a lot of nonsense, but it's like, it could be, it's a risk that you don't want to lean into too much and become like a Monero, where there's no reason why Monero can't be on something like Near Intents other than reputation, that maybe they got a little too hardcore with the reputation and therefore they're missing out on that. And now they're on these weird centralized, Wagyu things that could be all rugged and stuff. So basically, if you want to succeed, you can't be just righteous and that's enough. You have to find other ways. You have to find a way of a product market fit with that. And freedom is like the ultimate benefit, where if you are more free, you have more to reach for to build cool things. There's use cases where you don't have to say, no, we can't do that. Everything's on the table with freedom. You have more in your back pocket. But you still have to build stuff, is my point. You still have to build products people want to use. You still have to build systems. You still have to compete with the people that won't go to absolute freedom. And so that's the big challenge, is how do you make THORChain work how do you make THORChain work better than the competition for non-North Korean use cases?
Well, it's and I think we have to give credit to Chad, because he's a really smart guy, creative guy. You know, it's hard to get smart and creative in the same combo, right? And I think he's got it, and he's always coming up with new ways to make THORChain cheaper on quotes. I think it's just that simple. You know, we got to start winning more quotes in our existing integrations, and you know, he's coming up with a bunch of different ways to do that, and not just cheaper quotes, but also faster execution. And you know, those, you know, like we're talking about earlier with technology, it just takes time to roll these things out. You know, get them tested, get them working, and you know, I've been saying this now for a couple of years. It's just like eating healthy and exercising. Like, you don't get that body you want. You know, when you do it the right way, it takes a year or two, you know, to eat healthy and exercise. Yeah, if you want to take a Zempic and take steroids and whatever and shortcut it, you can. But then there's those trade-offs, right, to go in that route. So I think THORChain's doing it the healthy way. And I really do believe that, like, us having liquidity pools, especially going to protocol own liquidity, like, we can eventually become the cheapest place to trade, to swap, versus DEX or SEX. And because we'll have this always on liquidity that really is, I mean, it's going to be there no matter what. You know, we could offer 1 basis point trades, right? It's still better than getting 100% of those trades versus 0% of everything else. Whereas, like, a lot of these solvers and market makers, you know, they have some minimum benchmark they need to make, right, before they will participate in the trades. Whereas the AMM is always on. And then, you know, it's just like with the freedom, you're absolutely right. And this whole movement, the whole point of Bitcoin and crypto is decentralization, no censorship, no, and it's permissionless. If the market stops valuing that, then this movement has failed. This whole technology, everything is it's over, right? It's done. Like, forget about Bitcoin. It's not going anywhere. I mean, just buy gold. But I don't believe that. You know, I think this technology is real. I think the movement's real. Maybe it's stalled because it's getting watered down with normies and institutions. But and the institutions might be looping some of these cryptos back into TradFi. But permissionless and non-censorship, it's such a tremendous value to society. Not even with money, but even just knowledge, right? This is why free speech has been so important over the last couple hundred years, and why people really fight for it. And it's like, well, you know, why do you care about free speech so much? You know, like, what's the big deal? It's like, you don't understand how truly important it is to human civilization. And that applies to money as well, you know, free speech. So, and THORChain, we're leading that charge. You know, we're probably one of 10 protocols, maybe 15, I don't know, that really truly stand behind it. And you know, you look at Ledger, what, you know, the data leaks, and Trezor and the data leaks, the KYC getting leaked, Cold Card with the entropy problem. Like, where was I going with that? If that's real, I feel so bad for those people. It's so bad. I didn't mean to bring on it to dunk on them. I had to shoot. I was going to loop that in the THORChain somehow. I think where I was going with it is just staying true to the ethos. Like, we'll come out ahead in the end, and it's, you know, more these other platforms that people think they can trust realize they can't. It's going to create more and more demand for truly permissionless, no censorship. And you know, you mentioned Near and their 0.1%. Well, that's just DPRK today.
Right.
Where the world is heading is pretty soon I'm going to be considered a criminal. Joel, Denny, we're all going to be considered criminals, right? We're all guilty until proven innocent. And we're already there in a lot of ways. You know, if anyone has any amount of money in a traditional bank and you want to do a wire transfer, or you want to withdraw a few grand to buy a used car or whatever, you know, the amount of questions that you're put through and like treated like you're, you know, what are you doing wrong? I'm like, this is my money. Like, I'm telling you what to do with it.
Wasn't always
But
this
now
way either.
Pardon?
Wasn't always this way. Like,
No, exactly.
think about
And
the fiat system like 20, 30 years ago. You did not have all this. But the point is you could always have it. Therefore, if you can, it will always turn out that way over a long enough period of time.
Exactly. And I think we're accelerating. We're in that, right? So we're moving the social credit system. We're moving to central bank digital currencies. We're moving to all that Orwellian stuff. And we're not there yet. And the people that are in that is still, they're still benefiting. Everyone's still making money and getting rich. So like the pot is still boiling, right? But no one's really feeling the heat yet. And when the majority of people do start feeling the heat, THORChain is going to be there to embrace them, accept them. Here's your safe harbor, your safety, right? So
shout out Harp Index.
Well, I like those guys. I mean, they're great, right? I mean, a lot of they're ex-THORChain guys, and they're good guys, right? But I think this THORChain is, you know, network effects. THORChain is too far gone. I don't think they can catch up. And they have to be centralized. Well, not have to be. You got to start everywhere. Everyone starts somewhere. They're starting centralized. You know, their nodes are permissioned. You know, they have to attract liquidity. It's really friggin' hard. So this is the thing when I've learned just with other investments is being first is so important to get those network effects going. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be first. And THORChain was first. And we got those network effects going. And you said it earlier too, Joel, about the big guys like Bitcoin. You know, they don't have to innovate as much. Ethereum don't have to innovate as much. Solana does because they have to catch up. In the DEX world, the exchange world, THORChain was first, right? You know, everyone has to catch up to us. And I don't see it happening. And so it might take longer than we all want for THORChain to really succeed and really prosper. You know, maybe it takes another couple of years still, but I still feel we're on that path. It's still happening.
Yeah. I think so too. The thing is, as far as like volume and stuff, I think probably like in terms of integrations, availability and stuff, I'm pretty sure Near is at the top today. And there's some catch up to do. I think that it can happen. A former employer of mine, Morton Blackwell of the Leadership Institute, he had a famous quote where he said, "You owe it to your philosophy to study how to win. If you believe in freedom and decentralization, if you actually care about it and you don't just like wear this philosophy like, look how cool I am, I have righteousness. If you care about it, you have to study how to make it win because it's not going to win unless you make it win." And there's I think that like to use like the Near is just a good example as a contrast. I mean,
but I don't think it's a fair comparison because, okay, fine. Let's just say I'll agree with you that they maybe have more integrations, more volume than THORChain. But they took a shortcut. They cut a corner. They have their API where they censor. So I view that volume no different than Coinbase or Binance. So yeah, THORChain has a long way to catch up to Coinbase and Binance, but they're centralized, right? And that's the benefit of centralization is you can move quicker and faster. Whereas THORChain is staying decentralized and it takes us a bit longer because we're not cutting corners. And so that centralized volume that Near has could easily evaporate, easily be turned off, easily become more censored. Right. So I don't consider that as like direct competition. I consider that more like centralized exchange volume. So
I can, and if I get in here, because this is something, you know, I was getting feisty about a few days ago, and I know it was just recently on your space Dash, the Dash crypto quorum space. You know, we got to figure out what a DEX is. Like, what is a DEX? Because, you know, there are some people that compare us to us, like compare themselves to us. I'm like, you're not a DEX. If you're a DEX, I don't know what the hell we are. You know what I mean? And that goes exactly to the point what Kenton was saying earlier. It's just like, you guys took shortcuts, right? The first principles are not in there. You have a very interesting, design. You guys work really hard on, but you mess up the first principles. First principles are gone. And I don't know what you call these people. Maybe you call them a decentralized sex. A decentralized sex. I don't know. But you cannot have any elements that can be censored. And the system with THORChain, especially with the app layer, it's going to be fully auditable from top to bottom. There is no man behind the curtain. There is no Wizard of Oz here. It is a permissionless, decentralized economic infrastructure, and it is so incredibly hard to do, much, much harder than what our competitors are trying to do, but we're going to do it. And to put yours to the point, Joel, it's like the market is right now just favors what's cheapest, what's fastest, what's this. And I get that. But Kenton, I think, is just absolutely on it when he says, over the long run, those design decisions, those principles that we stand by, they're just going to have to win, because you guys were saying it. We're not a criminal today. Maybe we just hate the DPRK, but then tomorrow it's Iran, then it's Venezuela, then maybe it's a political party, then maybe it's you or me or your family, right?
Yeah, there's something where I should chime in on like the complacency part of things, because first of all, things change, and I know a lot of people, for example, have been counting Dash out for years. And they're like, oh yeah, they have their master system that's too centralized, whatever. This is like 2015 era Bitcoiners or whatever, all the cope. And then they're like, Monero people are like, oh man, they don't have their privacy. We have the better privacy and stuff. It's like, well, listen, things change. 2026, Dash has instant finality with much more robust privacy technology, at least, than Monero. The implementation adoption is just not quite out there yet, but now like Monero's playing catch up to Dash as of a month ago, basically. And it's like, oh wow. But then they're like, okay, we got to catch up, but now we don't have instant finality. Now we don't have any kind of good finality. We're cubic and stuff for like 51% attacking the chain. There's like, okay, now we don't have like usernames, we don't have an app layer. We like the amount of catching up, and like, oh, but we're still the most like hardcore at the grassroots being used. It's like, yeah, for now, but then like there's so much money paying in stuff like Zcash and stuff. It's like you got to start making moves or you lose that. And so for example, I really have to do a big deep dive into the inner workings of all the different products that are in the greater Near ecosystem. As far as I'm aware, Near Intents as it's built is a decentralized system, but it's all routed through the one-click API, which is absolutely not decentralized and does censor. Yep. Now, there are alternatives today to the one-click API. I think Aurora, which Alex Shevchenko, the guy who started Near Intents, runs Aurora.dev. They have an alternative, a less censorious, I guess, one-click API alternative now. So today, it could end up being that once the censorship starts to ramp up and the requirements to be censored in order to be in polite companies start to ramp up, there start to be a lot of competing things that tap into Near's liquidity base and everything that then are actually decentralized. And so THORChain has to beat Near. It has to be in the mix with it today, despite having the disadvantage of not being able to just have everything centralized, right? Has to be in the mix today, because sometimes that advantage, your secret move you got in your back pocket, we don't censor. Sometimes they could get a secret move too, and then you're like, okay, well now it's not as competitive anymore. So you have to stay at the forefront of that.
Yeah.
Also,
I agree with you. Like we got to stay competitive on all fronts. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think we're trying, right? And I do. It's one thing to compete with Near. Like I think the real competition is Coinbase and Binance, right? Decentralized exchanges, right? So, the volume Near has. If we got if Near didn't even exist, or if THORChain was somehow able to take 100% of Near's volume, like the room price wouldn't be any different. Maybe it'd be up an extra 10 cents or something. in the grand scheme of things, it's negligible. And like that's the thing too with Near's volume. A lot of the stables to stables, right? Which they don't make any money on. I think we still have more Bitcoin Ethereum volume than Near. And and actually for all DEXs for that matter, if you look at Uniswap, most of the volume on DEXs is stables to stables. And Chad came out with an idea to offer free stable to stable swaps. And so he's been working on that. I think he figured out the math. So it doesn't really end up costing THORChain anything. We can actually do it and go sideways. But that in itself could attract a lot of volume, starts having us show up in different categories where our volume's going up. That can be attraction to wallets. We talked to one big wallet. Their focus is stablecoin payments. That's what they want to do.
Very popular these days.
Pardon?
Very popular these days.
Yeah. And so if we can come to them, hey, listen, you can swap any stablecoin, 0 fees by integrating THORChain. Now that could be interesting. Like they might want to only offer Tether on Tron, but they can say, come in with Tether on Solana, USD on Ethereum, whatever stable you have, come in, swap for free Tether to Tron, make the payment Tether to Tron, Tether to the merchant, right?
Yeah.
So,
which by the way, this could be like a killer app because stablecoins are overwhelmingly taking over payment volumes these days. And I think
it's going to happen. 10 years, all stablecoins.
Yeah. Right? And I think stablecoins as a stand-in for freedom money their days are numbered. But despite that, a lot of people are going to use them. Yeah. The point is, I think that the friction of stablecoins is just like brutal. And so because there's so many of them, there's so many DEXs, there's so many gas fees, there's everything. And I think that if you had a master stablecoin wallet that would just consolidate your stablecoins, so it's just USD, right? It's a USD stablecoin, and they can send in any coin they want, any USDC, USDT, USDC on Tron, there's USDCE on Arbitrum versus USDC on Arbitrum versus on ETH versus on whatever. And as long as they decide what's the best base network to have it on, then you can use THORChain Rails to abstract all the stuff away. So this is the stablecoin wallet that just works. You can just dump whatever collection of shitcoins in there. You can even just be like, straighten out my tangled mess. You send all... Like you have 12 different stable coins on different networks and stuff. You set them all into the wall. You hit a thing, goes, and then one coin, and it unfucks your stable coins. Like I think that could be a good use case. There's something else that I think is funny, a funny example of like pivoting in a free market, which is is a kind of a goofy example. Maybe one of the more beautiful things about in a free market, how you can pivot and find your way. And Denny probably knows a little bit about this, but there is a local to the southwest grocery store chain called Food City. Now, Food City was it's like the Kmart of grocery stores. It just was not competitive. It was just everyone's kicking its ass. It was on its way out, and it just always looked a little dingy, had a vague smell of meat in there, and it was crappy, but then they noticed that there's a lot of Mexicans showing up in there. What's going on with this? And it's there's a lot of immigrant populations in Arizona in particular that this resembled grocery stores that they were used to back home. Just the vibe of it, the overall thing. It just ended up becoming kind of third worldy almost in a way that it just seemed more comfortable. And so they're pivot. Now Food City is a Latin grocery store, basically. So they specialize in Mexican, South American, whatever foods and everything. They're always playing the mariachi music there. Everyone calls it El Food City. It's pretty funny how they're on their way out the door, and they found a unique market niche and they pivoted hard into it, and now they're in the game still. They managed to figure that out. Sometimes the market tells you where you fit in. You don't tell yourself. And so that's one of those things why I think one of the mistakes in the early days of THORChain was this well, we're the number one, and we get to sort of pick and choose which chains we add, and we're going to just focus on a couple of these. It's kind of like, uh, kind of being, and maybe this is like the Nine Realms days or whatever, but just the era when everyone was frustrated that their chain wasn't being added to THORChain. But like the ultimate unlock for a DEX has always been privacy assets, especially the ones with the fewest listings, which Monero is number one. And obviously, I mean, no one needs to hear this today. The THORChain should have Monero. Yeah, no shit. But like the point is, where like right now, the niche, I'm being very broad strokes. So obviously, I'm being inaccurate for the sake of being broad strokes. But right now, the killer app of THORChain is the DPRK swaps. And the way you need another killer app that means like, why would you use this over something like Near in the year of our Lord 2026, not like years in the future when censorship ramps up? Well, it's the only spot where you can get all the good privacy coins. Like, does Near have Xano? No, probably won't. Does Near have, or you're just using Near as an example, Chainflip. I don't even know what the hell Chainflip does, by the way. From my perspective, they like don't have a million chains. It's just like, I don't even know why they exist, but leave that aside.
Me neither.
But so that's why I'd like to throw them in as an example, but I'm like, nah, why? So you get, I mean, Near does have Dash and Zcash, and it has like a private shard and stuff. So they have some good stuff on privacy to a certain extent. But again, they probably won't add Xano. They very likely won't add Monero. And so if you have that one-stop shop of like, this is where you can have privacy coins, and then you market it that we won't censor your transactions. There's an inability to censor on the protocol level. And you market that to people, because right now, the only people that care are criminals, kind of. Again, I'm beginning super broad strokes here. The only people that care about it are criminals because they have no choice. People like me, I have all the choice in the world. I could have a bank account. I don't have a criminal record. I have an upper middle class like education and stuff. I could be the most safe normie, uncensored. No one's censoring me. I don't swear online even. I mean, other than that one rant video I did. But like, I have no need for freedom. But I care about freedom, which is where my need comes from. So the niche for THORChain, in my opinion, at least one of them, the stablecoin product niche could be another interesting, side project that works really well. But it's the freedom. You need to appeal to all the freedom assets that freedom lovers have. And then you need to tell them that this is the place where you won't be censored. You weren't going to be censored anyway. Let's be honest, Mr. Random ANCAP, who still files his taxes correctly and everything like that. But like, you weren't going to be censored anyway, but you really value that feeling that like, I just know that this is going through no matter what, even though maybe with Near it will go through with that no matter what for the most part. But like, just knowing that in your heart that that makes you feel good. So then you're going to use THORChain. You're going to get some Monero, swap it for Xano, swap it for Dash, Zcash. And then that's where you get like, when you start marketing it side by side, and you can be like, oh, you want to swap Zcash and Dash on Near? You can do that. But it's like, yeah, but what about the other ones? Well, we don't have that. And it's like the one network that will never censor you. And Near's like, well, we're pretty decentralized too, but they can't compete with that narrative, that product market fit. That's where you got it. So as I mentioned a million times, I think that's the THORChain comeback story. It starts with that one big product, focusing on being like the privacy layer, 0. The other thing about the fast finality, as I mentioned before, that's something we'll have to just figure out what makes sense across the different networks, whether it's Maya or THORChain. I mean, obviously for Dash, but there's also other ones that have fast finality. Near is not nearly as interested in the fast finality stuff because they kind of got bigger fish to fry, and they also get spooked by the Litecoin stuff. So like, I've been talking to them for a while about like, look, why don't you do instant Dash transactions? Look, Maya does it like 40 seconds. Look at the use case. Look how fun this is. And look at our security. Look how you cannot reverse a chain locked block. Look at how an instant send transaction will make it into a chain locked block. And here it's permanent. It's irreversible. And they're just like, yeah, well, we'll look it over, but we're spooked for now. So it could be, again, opportunity. There's just opportunities everywhere. Yeah. But I think that as long as THORChain keeps like fighting and growing, not just being like, we're still here, but like, we're still here and we're growing, we're building new use cases, we're onboarding new things. I think that THORChain is going to be has that killer advantage of being one, just freedom maxi uncensored, because then you have fewer limitations in what you can do, and two, being the underdog, being the come from behind, being the almost got wrecked a million times and everyone wrote you off. That gives you a drive that incumbents just don't have.
The privacy coin. Sorry, Danny. The privacy dexing, of course. I think I agree. That'll be something good to talk about. The other one is just nobody knows about THORChain, right? Which is what I'm trying to change and get more people to know about it, hear about it. That just takes money and time as well. It's expensive to try and get everyone to hear about you. But honestly, the bigger thing is going to be, how do we compete with centralized exchanges, right? That's where all the volume is. And honestly, I think it's going to be price. We're just going to have to get THORChain, trading on THORChain as cheap or cheaper than Binance. If you look at Coinbase, their fees, their commissions, like on the sub, I think it's like the sub 1 million or sub $500,000 trades, like we're competitive. We can compete on Coinbase, but not Binance. We're still more expensive than Binance. I think if we can get genuinely cheaper than Binance and everyone knows about THORChain, like we will start seeing a lot of volume. We will start winning. Because it needs to be like, why would somebody get off a centralized exchange and go to a DEX? Like, it's a lot of friction, right? For people like us who are freedom maxis, we do this automatically, right? We pay a premium to trade on a DEX versus using a SEX. But for the average Joe or the bulk of those SEX users, there's got to be something really enticing. I think it's going to be saving money and freedom, right? We need to offer a bit. There has to be more to it. And if everyone was wondering with the SEX volume, I am referring to spot volume. I'm not referring to margin trading or anything like that. The spot volume on SEX is huge. If THORChain captures, just a few percent of that spot volume, that'd be huge for THORChain. So, I think in my opinion, in my mind, that's our real competition, are the centralized exchanges. It's not Near or Chainflip.
Yeah.
They're just annoyances. People, biting at our heels type thing. They're just kind of bugging us. It's the centralized exchanges that, in theory, THORChain and Near should be working together to go after the centralized exchange volume, right?
I said the same thing.
Right, like reorgs and Bitcoiners should be working together to go after fiat money, right? It's not us versus Near. It's not gold versus Bitcoin. It's THORChain and Near versus the centralized players. So
and that's something that I think it is the case. And again, shout out to the homies at SwapKit and some of the other good aggregators. But like, you get the package. Like, it's much more enticing for me to be able to just say, use something like a SwapKit or whatever, and you get, Near, Maya, THORChain all together. And then that is the alternative. It's not even like that bundle is like, it's like crypto versus fiat. It's just like the DEX bundle versus the centralized swappers. The thing about the centralized swappers, and this is like, there is to be honest, there is a little, like, I don't know if you heard what Familiar Cow was talking about on Space on Thursday and stuff. A lot of institutions, not just like institutions, but even smaller companies, really don't want the risk or the liability of their funds having something to do with criminal funds or something like that. And that is a safety feeling thing, the way they might pick something like Near because they feel that there's a safety that they get where they don't get with something like THORChain. There's also the opposite. And I have to say, from my own perspective, so I got a grant from a group called Power Up Privacy to do this privacy overhaul for Dash that now I'm just using to expand the private ecosystem. It's all in Monero. So people have to take Monero. Some of these companies don't have the right infrared to do it or whatever. Some are just, that's fine. Some are like, I don't know. The thing, so and also I would honestly like to have it in Dash to force them to take Dash, because if you're giving free money, you're just like, you might as well take the one that we have, right? But how do I get it into Dash? Well, I could use a centralized swap service right now. That's all I can do. Now, the problem with that is the shotgun KYC thing, where a lot of times you send a thing and they're like, whoa, this seems suspicious. Can you KYC and we'll hold your funds hostage? So I honestly, kept it all in Monero because I can't get it out. I'm not confident in getting out. Like, what would I do? Sign up for something like Kraken or whatever. And then okay, then KYC and all this stuff. And then be like, okay, well, this is this donated funds. Where did it come from? Well, this anonymous donor. Okay. Do you know anything about him? No. Can you? No. Can you give the money back? No, I don't. I can't give it back. I don't even know where I can't send it back. It's hot potato now. So what do you do? How do you do it? I would use something like THORChain. Today I can't because it's not live yet, but and also I'm not gonna raw dog through the whole thing and I'm not gonna be the one first trade that brings down the THORChains if there's a bug or something. I'm gonna wait it out a little bit. But the point is I can't I have a use case for something like this. And even this is something with Monero, it's spicy enough that even if Near supported Monero, I would wonder about using it through Near. I might be I'm still just going to keep it in Monero.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Monero world, this is a way bigger problem because they have so many centralized swappers like Xelix, Trocador, FixFloat, all these kinds of things. And they're always scared of being shotgun KYC'd. And they have whole websites saying these are the ones that are less likely to shotgun KYC you. These ones are less. Don't use this one. They did it to me. Changelog held me for hostage. Oh no, this one's good. And all this is just I want to use THORChain. I want to use THORChain. I want to use THORChain. It's all the way down the list.
That's what that means. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But Joel, you mentioned what Familiar Cow said about institutions, even small companies. Maybe they don't want to use THORChain because of the risk or dealing with criminals, whatever. That's a perfect example of the social credit system. That people are changing their behavior based on what they might think of them. And that isn't a reason to bend the knee, right?
Mm-hmm.
That highlights where we're at in the collapse of the system. That highlights where we're at in the social credit system taking control. And so So for me, that actually is a warning sign. Anyone using that thinking, THORChain, we got to be better or whatever, we have to avoid criminals. No, that actually really highlights how bad things are getting. And now it might take us longer for us to succeed because there's going to be those businesses and institutions will think like that, and they will maybe purposely avoid THORChain. But in the end, they are going to fail because they're going to be trapped in that fiat system and they're going to go down with the ship. Right. Yes. So that doesn't concern me. It just sucks. It's okay, it's a harder hill for us to get over. I have to do better with marketing, try and improve our reputation. But to me, that isn't a reason why we're going to fail. It's actually a reason why we will succeed. It's just going to take time.
You mentioned earlier.
Sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
You mentioned earlier, Joel, about previous mistakes that THORChain made. 100%, I agree with you. And I think the one thing I always like to remind people who may not be super familiar with THORChain is that so much has changed. Right beforehand, THORChain was shy about privacy. Not necessarily the protocol itself, but a lot of the developers, they were afraid. Right, and so it takes time for a community to finagle itself in a way where everyone is aligned, and we've achieved that. We have 100% achieved that. And, we talk about, one-click experiences with Near protocol, but how decentralized is their validator set, right? How decentralized? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
It's been enormous.
I'm sorry, Dan. I just want to, sorry, I'm interrupting you, Danny. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I've spent so much energy trying to just continually build the base foundation of THORChain to make it as absolutely strong as possible. And so that the one thing or the things I should say, that we never surrendered upon, they actually matter. So go ahead, Kenton. What were you going to say?
Well, you brought up a really good point about Near's solvers. That's why they have to censor, because you're settling with an actual individual counterparty. And those solvers, those counterparties, which is permission, by the way, and Near decides who can and can't be a solver. They need to censor so they don't get in trouble who they're dealing with. And so, and this is where not just THORChain, but Uniswap, many other DEXs get a buy, because when a user comes and trades on our platform, on a real DEX, they're trading with a liquidity pool, and the counterparty they're settling with is an algorithm. It isn't an individual. And the trade's settling algorithmically. And so far, the courts have said, okay, well, there's no individual involved. That's okay. There's you don't need KYC or anything like that. But these intense solvers-based solutions, you are settling your trade with an individual, whether that be a person or an entity or whatever. And that person needs to KYC. They need to censor to keep for themselves to be safe, right? Mm-hmm. So Near's built this entire model that is so incredibly fragile. And just because they're not censoring as much now doesn't mean they won't be forced to do a lot more in the future. And then everything they've built comes collapsing down, because that 0.1% goes to 1% censorship, goes to 5% censorship, right? And it all unravels. Mm-hmm. And all that. Yeah, and I don't want someone to fail, right? We don't want to see people fail. Everyone's trying their best, wants to do good. But for us freedom-minded people, we see where this goes, right? How these systems eventually fall apart. So that's why we're having this debate and argument within a community about what does a decentralized exchange mean? And it's like, and just because you're offering permissionless, uncensored trades doesn't mean you're decentralized. You can still be centralized and offer those things until you get forced to add permission and censorship. Decentralized just means you can offer permissionless, no censorship, and get away with it, not be forced to introduce it, right? But we have all these centralized platforms or centralized elements that are offering the features of a DEX, but aren't actually decentralized. And it's just a matter of time for us to catch up to them. Just like it's a matter of time for the cold card entropy bug to catch up. Just a matter of time for Trezor's KYC to get hacked, Ledger's KYC to get hacked. It's just a matter of time for these things. It takes several years for them to be outed, right? FTX takes several years for the fraud to come out. These things just take time. And then everyone's like, oh, well, we got to do better. Why don't we do better? It's like, well, we have THORChain. Yeah. Let's use THORChain. It is better, right? And so
there's an interesting dichotomy, an interesting situation where there's it's the pioneer situation, right? Where when you're the pioneer, you come out, you take risk, and risk is always a cost. Like when you gamble, you take some money and you make tons of extra free money for nothing, but not nothing. The nothing is the risk that you just lose it all instead. So the gamble, it's a cost, and you can get paid for that. Pioneers come and take an incredible cost. Most pioneers never cash in. Most pioneers take all the arrows in the back and they fall face first, and then the settlers come after them after they've already taken and take all the spoils that the pioneer did. It happens over and over and over again. And I think that if you're to take a temporary look, you would say that that's where THORChain is now, is the pioneer that took all the arrows in the back, and then the settlers came in, the near intents or whatever of the world, and just settled on in the house that they built. And you could say Tornado Cash took the arrows in the back, so the other things there's over and over. Now, the alternative to that is, if you are an Elon Musk style person, and I think that, being nice, saying nice praise stuff about Elon is, cringe. People have done it forever. It's nothing new, but we should analyze how many times he's taken incredible risk to do something first. He's uncomfortable with the risk, but he didn't just do the risk. He also managed to survive long enough, survive the arrows in the back enough to become the top of the industry. And so, for example, let's take the EV market, the electric vehicle market. There's nothing really going on there. He went all in when there wasn't an EV market. He went all in with Tesla, but the real success part is, there's millions of near bankruptcies along the way. Everyone knows these stories by now, or you could do some late Googling or whatever. And he made a car that people wanted, whether or not they were into EVs. It just worked enough. He sold it, he marketed it, he created a cult of personality maybe around it, or he did whatever he had to. But now Tesla's became mainstream, and now they just dominate the EV market. There's just nothing anywhere close to that, because they really were the pioneers of the EV. They weren't necessarily the first, but they were the first ones, like hardcore in the scene, and they managed to survive at a high enough level enough to where they just got all the spoils and became the victor. Same thing with SpaceX. What is it? The rocket as a service model, or whatever you want to call it. The commercial, not government, space flight model ended up being huge, but they just blew up tons of rockets and lost a bunch of money in the meantime. But then they didn't just pave the way for someone else to come in. They paved the way and they stayed at the top. And so now Starlink with their 10,000 satellites or whatever, now they've pioneered that, and now they have the market dominance. Now Bezos launched 3,000 of his own for an Amazon competitor. So he's trying to do it too, but no one's competing with Elon here. Same thing happened with X, where all social media was trending in a censored direction, Twitter included. Elon's like, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to do things. He took so many arrows. If you look at the revenue graph for X, just crashes off a cliff after 25 or whenever he bought it, 24. It just crashes off a cliff because all the advertisers left, or I don't know. I don't want to get into all the politics involved with all that stuff. Yeah. But he cut the staff like 80% down. He just made it through and overhauled the revenue model to where now so much, like, the advertising revenue is up a little from the bottom, but it's still way below where it used to be. But then the creator subscriptions and other business model things have grown enough. Their revenue's still not quite where it was before, but their costs are way down versus that. Now they're powering the XAI stuff through Grok. Grok was a come behind shitty model that, it's in X, therefore everyone uses it. Now it's competitive with things like Claude and ChatGPT today, the latest Grok models on a bunch of benchmarks. So he took the hits, but then won long enough to now it's like Zuckerberg started to say, we're not filtering this content on Meta anymore. And a bunch of people called off their censorship things on the other social media platforms after he took the arrows in the back and proved that you can. But more importantly, he proved you can, but stayed in there at a high enough level to where now X is the social network that matters. Everything else does not matter to that level. Okay. So this is the THORChain lesson, is take the arrows in the back to be the ones who will not filter North Korean transactions, it won't make these kinds of compromises, but then have to be in the game winning at a high enough level to where when the rest of the market has to compete, where Near got a lot more market coverage a lot faster, but if there needs to be a market where you don't have any reliance on these, like whether it's the solvers or whether it's a one-click API or whatever, it might take a lot of work to undo that. And by the time they've figured out a way to make it so that you cannot censor on Near and they get that volume that THORChain's getting, THORChain's just too far ahead in the fully uncensored game to where then it's not too late to shift, but they have to now, when they were maybe say a larger share of the on-chain swapping, let's say, maybe not say DEX, but the on-chain swapping market, now they're going to have to be a smaller portion of the DEX market that THORChain is the dominant player that no one can compete with at this point.
Yeah.
Joel, you could...
I'm not worried about Near because, well, one, their volume has gone down since swap.thorchain.org went live. And they're subsidizing their trades. Right? THORChain is not subsidizing anything. And yeah, they've got a bigger treasury. They can last a lot longer. But obviously the subsidizing is they're starting to feel it, because now they want to introduce like a 50% tax on their integrators and their partners. Apparently, their existing ones are fine. It's only going to be on any new ones, and so like Near isn't making any money off all that volume they're getting. They're actually paying out of pocket for it. So again, it's fake volume. And then you're talking about integrations and whatnot. Like we're offering our integrations discounts, and Near wants to add on premiums by taking half their affiliate fee. So I just don't see how Near is going to grow relative to THORChain. Like all their growth so far has been out of subsidy, and it's going to catch up to them. Whereas THORChain's growth has been organic and real, and all our money is real. Bless the node operators; they've been really struggling this last year and a half.
For they will inherit the earth.
Exactly. The meek node operators will inherit the earth. But they've been what do we call them, Danny? What's a good word? Like real, like stalwarts, like real,
determined.
Determined. You're not giving up. You're not throwing in the towel.
No.
I'm sure some of them. I think some node operators are actually running nodes full time for THORChain. That was their full time job. I'm assuming they probably had to get some other jobs now, to keep the lights on, put food on their tables. Like this community is determined. It's not going away. Like it's like we don't want any more arrows, but we keep taking them in stride. So I just don't see how anyone can beat us in the long run.
I'd love to add something here.
Yeah, sorry, Danny. Go. I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, you don't. No. I just no. This is a layup. No, you gave me a layup, bro. And Joel, I want to just say real quick, I definitely want to talk about DashCon. We really got to. I want to transition to that, but this is so perfect to what you and Kenton are saying, because the Tesla example is completely perfect. So I was an investor in Tesla, so I'm very familiar how they were. So 2019-ish era. They had the Roadster, their first prototype car. It was I think it was like
I remember that.
I think it was like $250,000 or something like that, maybe 100,000 on it. It was expensive, but they were trying to, build up equity, to build up this business, right? They didn't know what they were doing. They went for it. And so Elon had this vision of how it's all going to work. And how it was going to work was you have a manufacturing plant and everything is done by robots. Everything. Where robot arms go, choo, 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 choo. And you don't need humans.
Hopefully
you don't
without
need
those
anything.
sound effects.
Well, yeah, probably, hopefully not. I'm sorry, but you don't need.
There's the visual of like just what's going on in this factory.
Anyway,
sorry, go ahead.
And no humans are involved, right? No humans are involved, and then you have no upkeep in terms of like wages, right? You just have maintenance, and then we're going to optimize these machines. They're going to get quicker, they're going to get faster, and we're going to have this autonomous system that's just building cars, and we're just going to crush it. We're going to kill, right? So they build their factory, they try it, they get these machines, and production is slow. It sucks. It's not good, and they still got bills, they still got maintenance, they still got things that could tear up, and they're becoming more and more insolvent, right? What do? This is not working. And Elon Musk said, I was wrong. Humans are, they're underrated, because a human's hand, the way it articulates, this is like 25 tools in one, right? And a human can quickly go up and do the little things and do this and do that. And so
not as rigid.
They took out all these machines and they put humans on the assembly line. Right. And they optimize, removing processes. We don't need this. They did full cast molds. Right. And they got it through the skin of their teeth. They figured it out. And so that just goes to show, when THORChain was created back in 2021, we did ChaosNet. We didn't know what we knew. We knew what we needed to do, but we didn't know what we were doing. Right? We didn't know how it should be done. And the THORChain, compared to Tesla, like 2021 to now, it's not even the same thing. We got it figured out. We've got a marketing team. We've got Kenton. We're doing podcasts. We're doing outreach. We have Chad now, who's like Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk was sleeping inside the assembly lines of the factories, just never going home. I'm going to figure this out. Now we have Chad, as Kenton said earlier, directly involved with trying to make things specifically geared and engineered to give the best product perfect for our integrators. I agree with Kenton. I think we got it. Let's go, And
what the cherry on top is? We're gonna have a dash pool soon.
That's right, baby. And I'd like to learn about that at the new DashCon episode. So what's going on with DashCon there, Joel?
September 3rd, Amsterdam. So we're having a conference in Amsterdam. easy city to get to for East Coast North Americans, especially, but and Europeans, the Europoors can come. September 3rd, De Holland Studios in Amsterdam. September 4th and 5th is Common Sense, which is a cypherpunk conference that we're partnering with on this. And get as many people out to this thing as you want. Anyone who wants to sponsor, we're taking sponsorships. We're at like earlier, I guess, maybe a lot of conferences sort of focused on like, oh, let's just get everything programmed the right way. Let's get these few level sponsors here, this one here. Let's just figure out. We're at this point wanting to make this as big as we can. So everyone who wants to come in, come. If you want to sponsor. If you're like, well, I don't know what we can afford for these tickets or this sponsorship or whatever, let's talk. Let's figure something out. Let's get as much as we can for both of these conferences. This is one of those, like, the crypto world, the crypto industry is sort of dying off a little bit. It's a tough time for a lot of people. I notice a lot of like influencers are out of work or looking for stuff. A lot of businesses are shutting down. A lot of chains are being gobbled up by private equity, like all kinds of stuff going on. And this is where like the cypherpunk movement has a chance to just rebound and it just like stay in the pocket. So everyone should come out. If you're an interesting person, if you're a freedom person, please come speak. I'll make sure you get to speak. And we need a THORChain at least on a panel, if not doing a talk. So let's figure that out.
I feel bad, Joel. I keep forgetting about it. We got to talk about it. Maybe now's not the time, but offline. Yeah, we should talk about something.
Yeah, we'll get the most we can done. But the thing is, like, I think we're close to a lot of really cool things. Like, I think we're close to crypto mass adoption. I think that THORChain, as you mentioned, has enough life to it that if you just get that extra boost from Monero, Dash, Zcash, Xano, maybe Quai, like some of these other ones, and you just hang in there while all the other fruits of the decision start to come to light, where like the fee competitiveness, now it's just like if you start lowering fees while the cheaper competitors start increasing their fees, and then it's just like, all right, well then they're safer according to, risk averse businesses, but now they're more expensive and they're a little slower. And then the users are all on this one. Then your app is like, well, my competitor went all in on the THORChain stuff. We didn't, and they're kicking, and our users are going over there. Now all of a sudden the risk aversion slips, and then they want the money, and then they go over to the Thor side, or they just say like, there's so much of a demand for Monero and Xano and Quai and stuff, and like Near doesn't have them. Near may be out of one or two of them, but they don't have all of them. And it's just like, we want the one that does all of this. Hey, can we just add a THORChain route too? Because we want this. And it's just like, it's all coming together. And same thing with like Dash. For all these years, we got the masternode system before anyone had anything similar, like the incentivized node system. We had instant finality before anyone ever did. We have had the longest running, the oldest chain that has built-in privacy features of any kind. We had the oldest DAO. We just did everything right. A capped supply, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, the price, why would I just use a stable coin? Because, the price is too volatile. It's like people are like, well, I wish the price was higher. But if you have utility and demand and you start building products that just work and building integrations and just keep grinding and grinding and grinding on this base of being super decentralized, secure, private, usable, scalable, and scarce, then that starts to ratchet up, and then you have an explosion moment and things go. So I kind of feel like the paths have been different, but like Dash, THORChain, and the cypherpunk movement as coalesces around DashCon and Common Sense, it's our time. It's coming to a head. This is where we take off into the next generation.
Absolutely. 100%. I totally agree. Yeah, I'd love to, let's chat about it after this, after we're done here on the podcast. This sounds like such a great thing. And I love this idea of just everyone coming together to push this ethos. I mean, this is great, man, what we're building here. I feel like it's being built in real time, right? And not to go too far back in the conversation, but it's just the permissionless ethos is so essential. I just wish people could extrapolate, the dangers of not having economic infrastructure that's not neutral. I mean, you could easily imagine a world where, blockchain and warfare get intermixed. I mean, you could say we're early and we're not there yet, but that permissionless infrastructure, that's just absolutely game changing.
Yeah, wait till the first mining pool starts censoring a Bitcoin transaction for the state of Hormuz. The first mining pool that's just like, we don't want this on our chain.
Yeah.
And then other mining pools pick it up. I do think that if Bitcoin remains relevant long enough, which it might, we will see a chain fork over not nonsense like the whole BIP 110 stuff or the eCash fork or what, none of this petty stuff, but over a transaction where there's going to be like, we're not doing this, and the other side, no, we are doing this, and then that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. And
it happened with THORChain, and during the February, the DRPK hack from Bybit, the THORChain nodes did go back and forth. There was a bit of a tug of war on whether to turn off the ETH swaps on Ethereum pool. And I think I'm sure it went to a 22-21 or something. And the majority of nodes, enough nodes voted to keep transactions on, swaps going. And that was probably the real turning point for the community in general, that anyone who's, did believe in censorship, they left, they quit, they ran away. And so what's left are people that pro-privacy, pro-permissionless. I think we're all very aligned on that now. So,
yeah, and we're glad it turned out that way, because thankfully they were in the minority and got to go over to, other projects or whatever that are a little bit more aligned with that, and they're hopefully doing great over there. But imagine if it was flipped. Imagine if it was like a third of the node operators or even 40% were just like, we can't censor. No way can we censor. But they got overridden. Now, would creating the uncensored THORChain fork have survived? Would they all run to Maya if Maya didn't do this? Would Maya have been able to catch up to where THORChain is today? It might have been a much darker time. It would have been, I think.
The little history thing. So when that was going on, Alex from Maya Protocol, he got ahead of it. He says, listen, if these funds start coming through Maya Protocol, and if we decide to censor, I will resign and go elsewhere.
Yes, I remember that.
It was a very serious time. There was a lot of fighting. I was fighting with people in DMs. It was war out there. And I said, no, like what if we don't do this, we're nothing. This is nothing here, and thank God it worked out.
It's important too, because now
I have to say I did that too with Dash in the last year or so. I said, like, look, we need to overhaul all our privacy for this to remain sovereign money. If you don't, I gotta go. I'm not gonna be here for much longer. I gotta go. So thankfully it happened. I'm still here. Yay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's because we need the network effects growing with people who are pro-privacy, right?
Correct.
And that was always my argument with getting Monero on sooner rather than later, because you talked about the earlier years in THORChain, Joel. I think it was just THORChain was poorly managed. You can have all kinds of stories of great projects with bad management, right?
Yep.
And one of the reasons against Monero, despite the technical challenges, was the devs they were scared, right? They didn't want to be touching privacy coins, didn't want to get in trouble. And it's like, well, that's fine. Then you need to leave, and we need to get moving and build the network effects for people who are pro privacy, because the longer we wait, the more entrenched the old way is, right? And we need to move forward with freedom. So and the sooner we do that, the sooner the network effects get going, the more freedom people we attract, the stronger we get. The more we need to be all working together, becoming more decentralized with the same ethos. So I feel really good. I think THORChain's on that path now. I think the whole community is on board. So
And just like you said earlier about the arrows in the back, like when we add XMR and it's okay and we're still here, we're going to have a flood of competitors who all of a sudden want to add XMR again, right? That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, we just keep pushing this industry forward and everyone tries to, that we take the arrows and that means, but it's okay. We'll do what we got to do.
So what you got to do is be ready to be tradable on every single service, app, whatever. Anywhere the Monero community is now, you have to have pre-lined up. And if you need any help with any of that stuff, let me know. I'll get you in touch with every wallet, every site, every swap, everything. So as soon as this is good, you hit the ground running, so you don't do like a weak start and then a competitor comes in and virtue signals harder and takes up all that stuff you worked so hard for.
If you have a list of those wallets or platforms, please send it to me. Several of them have already reached out to me. They've been proactive and they want to get this going.
Cake Wallet's got to be the top.
They promised or told me as soon as we go live, it's going to be live in Cake Wallet. So we've had a group chat with them now for several months. Unstoppable Wallet's going to have it.
Edge, of course.
There's a few other Monero wallets that reached out to me for the API. They're going to, as soon as we go live with the pool, they're going to go live with it. We've got Monero Old Bull from China. I like this guy. I don't know, something about him. I like his vibe. But he's apparently like a Monero influencer in China, and he wants to get like this is awesome. I'm going to get THORChain going in China. Tell everybody about it. So the Monero community they're paying attention. Yeah. But if you have a list, please send it to me, and then I'll reach out to them and please.
Yeah, I'll have like at least 5-6 bullet points in a private message after this. I'm gonna
great.
When we're done, I'm gonna go to the coffee shop and just do a weekend coffee and work for a couple hours or so. So this will be like pretend like work while pretending I'm not working. So that'll be fun.
Well, maybe we should let you get to that. What do you guys think? Should we start wrapping it up? Is there, Joel, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? Anything else about Dash? Anything else we need to know?
Things are moving. I already talked about the Dash to anything stuff, and we'll be figuring out the best way of doing like the private swaps in the wallet and stuff. A lot of things to figure out, right? We're probably going to find a way to do Dash to Bitcoin via the Lightning Network, private Dash, ZK Dash to Lightning in like 10 seconds flat in the wallet. And I think I'll get that done, because then every single Square point of sale system out there you can pay from your Dash wallet just right there, from your fully private money to any Square wallet. If you have a barber that has Square, if you have a local coffee shop, working on that. That's something I feel like I have enough backups that I feel like it's something I can kind of like say is coming. So
cool.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Cool, man. Well, dude, I'm looking forward to all the developments on Dash and getting you guys on THORChain. Long time coming. And I'm looking forward to we'll have to have this chat again, 6 months or something.
Absolutely.
Dash pool is live, is going. Any more? Maybe you got your Dash to Big Lightning payment done. You can tell us about it. We'll love to have you back, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me as always. It's good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, you're a great guest. Absolutely love it. All right, guys, you think that's good? You think we're gonna wrap it up now?
Nice, so. Yeah.
Okay, guys, just a reminder, DashCon, Hackathon, Common Sense, September 4th, September 5th, you guys. That's a Friday and a Saturday.
3, 4, 5.
3, 4,
Thursday,
5.
Friday, Saturday. That whole thing. Come for the whole package. It's going to be a good thing. And then, Saturday night, Sunday morning, pub crawl. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Oh, baby. You guys know. So, guys, if you want to go with like-minded individuals, like the ones you've been hearing talk this whole time, definitely check it out. That's what we need to do. If you've never been to a crypto conference, I can't imagine a better first experience than that particular conference, because not only do you get to meet individuals, but the problem with big conferences is they're not very personal. personal, right? There's so many people, you get lost in the sauce, you don't really do a lot. When they're like really awesome and tight communities like this, you really get that interaction, you build relationships that'll last forever. If you've never been to a crypto conference, let this be the first one. As Joel affectionately called a lot of you Europores, go. You will understand there is hope for you and the future of Europe. Not
Come
just
a
because
Euro
of Dash.
poor, leave a Euro rich. With freedom in your heart.
That was low-key awesome. You guys heard it. I can't do any better than that. Let's get this wrapped up, you guys. Always remember, for THORChain data and insights, follow @Ray Analytics on X. As Kenton said earlier, he's doing a lot of work for THORChain, so make sure to support him. And he also does written recaps of all the podcasts, so he will have a written recap of this amazing Dash podcast we've done today. And always remember, guys, the views expressed are solely of the hosts and guests. Any action taken based on this information is at your own risk. Past performance is never indicative of future results. The THORChain community does not endorse or condone any illicit activity of any kind whatsoever. Next Saturday, Kenton said it, we're going to be having IBEC, Unstoppable Wall. They're going to be joining us, guys. I cannot wait to talk to them. We love IBEC. So look out for that. Go ahead, Joel.
Ask them when they're going to integrate shielded Dash transactions.
Ask
you'll probably
IBEC when.
I'll ask them, but we're actually having them because they're integrating Rune and TCY and RGL support for the THORChain tokens.
Yeah, ask him that though.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think you might get a good answer.
Joel, if you want to crash the podcast,
come and ask. Yeah.
I'll see if I'm around at that time, but I'd love to if I am.
Awesome. Well, I hope so. That'll be really entertaining having you both on there. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap it there. Hope everyone has a great rest of your weekend. We'll catch you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.